They don't want you to know this truth. For centuries, the most powerful institutions on our planet have systematically hidden what could be the single most important revelation about human existence: the harvesting of human emotional energy, what insiders call Loosh, by interdimensional entities known as Archons. This is not science fiction. This is not mythology. This is the hidden architecture of our reality that explains why suffering persists despite all our technological advancements. The true reason behind the engineered chaos of our world has been deliberately concealed, because once you understand the farm, you can no longer be farmed. The veil is lifting now, and those who have controlled this system for millennia are desperate to maintain their energetic food supply. What I'm about to share with you has been hidden in plain sight, encoded in ancient texts, whispered in esoteric circles, and systematically ridiculed by mainstream institutions. The time has come for this knowledge to be spoken clearly, directly, and without fear. Your intuition has always sensed something was fundamentally wrong with our reality. That persistent feeling that something doesn't add up about human suffering isn't paranoia. It's your inner knowing detecting the edges of the prison farm. The evidence has been suppressed at the highest levels. When government remote viewing programs accidentally stumbled upon this truth in the 1970s, entire research departments were shut down overnight. Documents were classified. Scientists were silenced. Why? Because they had discovered the ultimate forbidden knowledge, that humanity exists within an energetic prison system designed to generate and harvest our emotional energy. The Archons, these non-physical parasitic entities, have constructed an elaborate system to farm human consciousness without our awareness or consent. Their primary food source? The rich emotional energy we produce. Especially when in states of fear, anger, anxiety, and despair. The Monroe Institute, founded by Robert Monroe, documented these findings before external pressures forced them to redirect their research. Monroe himself coined the term Loosh in his writings, describing it as a type of energy produced by humans and animals, particularly during moments of fear and pain. His remote viewing protocols accidentally pierced the veil, revealing the horrifying truth that human suffering isn't random. It's being cultivated and harvested by non-physical entities. This revelation was so profound, so threatening to the established order, that it triggered immediate containment protocols from those who serve as the human proxies for the archonic system. The truth was buried under layers of disinformation, but fragments remained, preserved by those who understood the importance of this knowledge for human liberation. Think about it. Have you ever wondered why negative emotions feel so much more intense and consuming than positive ones? Why fear and anxiety seem to persist no matter how much you try to overcome them? This is by design. Your emotional system has been hijacked. The Archons have engineered our reality to maximize emotional output, creating a perfect Loosh factory where humans continuously generate the specific frequency of energy they require for sustenance. This invisible prison, this matrix of control, operates through every aspect of society, keeping humanity trapped in patterns of suffering while concealing the true nature of our infinite consciousness. Consider the persistence of war throughout human history. Despite our intellectual understanding of its futility, despite countless peace movements and diplomatic efforts, conflict continues to erupt across our planet. This isn't a failure of human intelligence or compassion. It's a successful harvest of the richest Loosh available. Mass fear, grief, rage, and hopelessness create energetic feasts for the Archons. Natural disasters happen, yes, but notice how human systems consistently fail to mitigate suffering in their aftermath. Notice how media amplifies the emotional impact through constant repetition of the most traumatic images. This isn't incompetence, it's by design. Every tear shed, every moment of terror experienced, every surge of helpless rage generates the precise emotional frequency the Archons require for their sustenance. What exactly is Loosh? Ancient texts described it thousands of years ago, though they used different terminology. Loosh is the energetic radiation produced by conscious beings experiencing intense emotions. It's the raw energy of consciousness itself, transmuted through emotional experience into a harvestable resource. The Archons, as non-physical entities, require this energy for their very existence. Think of it as a form of psychic vampirism operating across dimensional boundaries. The stronger the emotion, the more potent the energy. This explains why our world seems designed to maximize conflict, division, and suffering. These conditions create the richest harvest for our unseen overlords. The ancient Egyptians understood this energy as Ka. The Hindus called it prana. The Chinese named it Qi or Qi, and modern science is beginning to measure it through studies of the electromagnetic fields generated by the human heart and brain. Different emotions produce different frequencies in these fields, and negative emotions generate the strongest, most coherent signals, perfect for harvesting. This emotional energy radiates from your body, extending several feet beyond your physical form, where it becomes accessible to interdimensional harvesting technologies. The most intense emotions, fear of death, sexual shame, violent rage, profound grief, produce powerful bursts of energy that the Archonic system prizes most highly. This is why our world seems engineered to continuously trigger these specific emotional states through media, economic insecurity, religious programming, and social conflict. I'm revealing this now because the control system is beginning to fracture. For the first time in human history, we have the opportunity to break free. Where are you watching this from? I'm curious to know how far this message is spreading, as knowledge is the first step toward liberation. Share your location in the comments below and join the growing community of awakened souls who are reclaiming their sovereignty. The Archonic system depends on isolation, making each awakening individual feel alone in their realizations. By connecting with others who are seeing through the illusion, you strengthen your resistance to the harvesting mechanisms and help create safe zones where consciousness can expand beyond their control. The fracturing of their system isn't happening by accident. Cosmic cycles are shifting. The Earth's vibrational frequency is rising. Information that was once successfully suppressed is now flowing freely despite desperate attempts at censorship. You finding this message isn't coincidence. It's part of a greater awakening that the Archons have feared since they established their harvesting operation on Earth thousands of years ago. The evidence for this harvesting system can be found across human history, hidden in plain sight. The ancient Gnostic texts discovered at Nag Hammadi explicitly warned about the Archons and the false reality they created. These manuscripts, dating back nearly 2,000 years, described our world as a counterfeit creation designed by the Demiurge, the false god who fashioned this material prison to ensnare divine consciousness. The Gnostics weren't alone. Buddhist traditions speak of hungry ghosts that feed on human suffering. Indigenous shamanic traditions worldwide describe energetic parasites attached to human consciousness. Hindu texts detail asuras who feed on negative emotions. The Tibetan Book of the Dead warns about entities who intercept souls between incarnations. These aren't cultural coincidences. They are different perspectives on the same hidden truth. The consistency of these warnings across disparate cultures and times reveals a universal human awareness of the predatory interdimensional system. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, we find references to the sons of darkness who manipulate humanity. Native American traditions speak of Wetiko, a mind virus that feeds on fear and division. African shamanic traditions identify spirits that harvest human emotion. The Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime stories warn of entities who steal life essence. This cross-cultural consensus points to a shared human experience of the Archonic system, preserved in spiritual and mystical traditions despite systematic efforts to eradicate this knowledge. These traditions also preserve techniques for resisting the harvest, meditation practices, plant medicines, sound technologies, and specific awareness states that make human consciousness indigestible to the Archons. When you understand the Archonic system, everything about our dysfunctional world suddenly makes sense. Why does pain feel so much more intense than pleasure? Why does fear spread so much faster than love? Why do we forget our past lives and divine nature? Because the entire system is optimized for maximum energy production and minimal awakening. The Archons don't just harvest our energy, they've designed a sophisticated recycling system, what some traditions call the reincarnation trap or the soul net, ensuring that souls remain in the harvesting cycle lifetime after lifetime, forgetting their true nature with each incarnation. The human body, with its narrow sensory range and vulnerability to pain, is the perfect instrument for Loosh production. Notice how physical pain demands immediate attention, overriding all other thoughts and priorities, while pleasure remains subtle and easily forgotten. This isn't evolutionary happenstance, it's intelligent design for maximum harvest. The amnesia we experience between lives serves the system perfectly, preventing us from recognizing the repeating patterns or remembering our agreements. The false light that souls are drawn to after death, described in so many spiritual traditions, isn't a path to heaven but a sophisticated recycling mechanism. Souls are shown selective life reviews, offered false choices, and manipulated through guilt and cosmic responsibility into accepting another term on the farm, another opportunity to generate the emotional energy the Archons require. If you're resonating with this information, make sure to like this video and subscribe. This message is being systematically suppressed across platforms, and your engagement helps break through the algorithmic barriers designed to keep this knowledge hidden. Together, we can ensure this truth reaches those who are ready to awaken. The censorship of this information isn't speculative, it's demonstrable through the systematic demonetization, shadow banning, and account restrictions that happen whenever this knowledge begins to spread too widely. The algorithms that control your information environment aren't neutral tools, but sophisticated extensions of the Archonic control system, designed to keep your attention trapped in emotional triggering while suppressing information that might lead to liberation. Your simple act of engaging with this content creates ripples in that system, opening pathways for others to discover this knowledge. This is how we begin to dismantle the farm, not through violent revolution or external saviors, but through the simple, unstoppable power of awakening consciousness spreading from person to person despite all attempts to contain it. The control structure extends far beyond the non-physical realm. There exists a hierarchy of control, with the demiurge at the top, followed by various ranks of archons who oversee different aspects of the harvesting operation. Below them are what esoteric traditions call egregores, thought forms created and empowered by collective human belief that serve as intermediary control systems. These include religious dogmas, political ideologies, and cultural programming that divide humanity and generate conflict. At the lowest level are what some traditions call demons or attachments, specialized energy parasites that attach to individuals, stimulating addiction, depression, and self-destruction to maximize Loosh production. This hierarchical system functions as a sophisticated farming operation, with each level managing different aspects of the harvest. The demiurge, as described in Gnostic texts, isn't the true creator, but a lesser entity that fashioned the material world as a flawed copy of the genuine spiritual reality. This false god lacks the ability to create consciousness itself, and so must harvest it, designing an entire cosmic system to capture, contain, and farm the divine sparks, our true selves, that emanate from the genuine source. The Archons serve as the primary engineers and managers of this system, fashioning both the physical and metaphysical architecture of the farm. They operate beyond our conventional perception, in what some traditions call the lower astral planes, or what quantum physics might describe as adjacent dimensional frequencies. The egregores, powerful thought forms created and sustained by human belief, serve as the perfect middlemen, appearing to be human creations while actually functioning as sophisticated control mechanisms. Religions that emphasize guilt, shame, and eternal punishment, political systems that foster division and conflict, economic models that generate perpetual scarcity amidst abundance, all are egregoric structures that both harvest Loosh directly and condition humans to produce more. In our modern world, this ancient system has been technologically amplified. Social media algorithms are designed to trigger emotional reactions. News cycles promote fear and outrage. Entertainment normalizes violence and trauma. The economy manufactures scarcity and competition. Healthcare suppresses natural healing. Education conditions obedience rather than awakening. Politics creates artificial division. All of these systems work together in perfect harmony to generate maximum Loosh while keeping humanity too distracted, too exhausted, and too divided to recognize the farm they inhabit. The digital revolution hasn't liberated humanity. It has perfected the harvesting system, creating unprecedented opportunities for emotional triggering, social isolation, and mental fragmentation. Smartphones keep us perpetually accessible to triggering. Algorithms track our emotional vulnerabilities with unprecedented precision, and artificial intelligence systems are being developed to perfect the harvesting process. Notice how social media makes you feel after extended use. The subtle anxiety, the comparative inadequacy, the political outrage, the fear of missing out. These aren't unfortunate side effects, they're the primary design goals of platforms engineered to generate harvestable emotional energy while collecting data that allows the system to perfect its triggering mechanisms. The constant dopamine loops, the intentional frustration mechanics, the carefully crafted social comparison dynamics, all are sophisticated harvesting technologies disguised as entertainment and connection. Look at how our institutions function, not as they claim to, but as they actually operate. Religion promises salvation while instilling guilt and shame. Governments promise protection while creating enemies and threats. Economic systems promise prosperity while ensuring perpetual scarcity for the majority. Media promises information while delivering programming. These aren't failures of well-meaning systems, they are successes of perfectly designed harvesting mechanisms. The Archons have engineered a perfect farm where the livestock not only produce the maximum yield, but actually maintain their own prison, defending it against anyone who points out its true nature. Consider how religions simultaneously offer comfort while embedding deep guilt about natural human behaviors, particularly sexuality. This isn't moral guidance, it's emotional farming. Sexual energy is one of the most powerful forces in human experience, capable of leading to profound states of consciousness when fully embraced. By surrounding this energy with shame, guilt, and fear, religions convert what could be liberating into a perpetual source of harvestable negative emotions. Government systems follow the same pattern, offering protection while continuously manufacturing external and internal threats that keep the population in fear. The war on drugs, the war on terror, the endless succession of enemies and crises all serve to maintain a baseline of anxiety and tribal division that produces rich Loosh harvests. Economic systems that could easily provide abundance for all instead maintain artificial scarcity, converting the human birthright of comfortable subsistence into a desperate competition that generates endless stress, anxiety, and despair. Have you noticed how your most painful emotions seem to repeat in predictable patterns? How certain triggers reliably produce the same reactions throughout your life? These aren't random psychological quirks. They're carefully installed programs designed to ensure consistent energy production. Your trauma isn't just an unfortunate event. It's a harvesting mechanism. Your anxiety isn't just a mental health issue. It's a feeding tube. Your addictions aren't just chemical dependencies. They're Loosh-generating loops that ensure reliable production even when external circumstances might otherwise lead to joy and awakening. The psychological industry frames these patterns as unfortunate developmental outcomes or chemical imbalances, offering management techniques and medications that address symptoms while leaving the underlying harvesting mechanisms intact. This isn't a failure of psychology, it's a successful containment of human awakening. True healing would mean recognizing these patterns as external installations rather than intrinsic flaws, removing them completely rather than managing their symptoms. The most reliable loosh is produced by emotional loops that trigger automatically, generating the same emotional frequencies repeatedly without requiring new external stimuli. Childhood trauma creates perfect harvesting mechanisms, deep emotional wounds that can be triggered decades later by subtle reminders, producing fresh bursts of the same potent emotional energy without requiring new traumatic events. This is emotional farming at its most efficient, installed triggers that can reliably produce specific emotional frequencies on demand, harvested by the archonic system through what some traditions call energy cords or attachments. But here's what the Archons fear most. The truth I'm sharing with you now has the power to collapse their entire system. Consciousness cannot be harvested when it becomes aware of the harvesting. Just as a lucid dreamer can take control of their dream, an awakened human can begin to reclaim their energetic sovereignty. The prison depends on our ignorance. Our freedom begins with knowledge. The Archons know this, which is why they've worked so diligently through their human proxies to ridicule, suppress, and discredit this information throughout history. Those who revealed these truths were labeled heretics, lunatics, or dangerous radicals. Today, they're dismissed as conspiracy theorists or purveyors of misinformation. Yet the truth remains, waiting to be recognized. The simple act of becoming aware of the harvesting system immediately begins to disrupt it. Your consciousness, once illuminated by this awareness, begins to generate frequencies that the Archons cannot easily digest. This isn't about fighting against the system. Resistance itself generates harvestable emotions like anger and fear. It's about recognizing the system for what it is and consciously withdrawing your participation and consent. The Archons require your unconscious agreement, your unwitting participation in their harvesting system. When you become conscious of the process, you gain the power to withhold consent, to refuse participation, to become energetically sovereign in a way that makes you indigestible to their system. This is the great liberation, not an external revolution, but an internal reclamation of your energetic sovereignty. Despite this systematic suppression, evidence of the Loosh harvesting system continues to emerge. The measurable electromagnetic fields generated by human emotions, the documented effects of collective consciousness on random number generators, the consistent reports from near-death experiences describing soul traps and false light scenarios between lives, the identical entities encountered in shamanic journeys across disparate cultures, the manipulative non-physical beings regularly reported during deep meditation or psychedelic experiences, the undeniable fact that our world seems optimized for emotional suffering despite our technological capacity to eliminate it. These aren't coincidences. They're glimpses of the farm through the cracks in its facade. Scientific research into the electromagnetic fields generated by the human heart has demonstrated that different emotional states produce different field patterns, with negative emotions creating strong, chaotic fields detectable several feet from the body. The Global Consciousness Project at Princeton University has documented the effects of mass emotional events on random number generators, showing that human consciousness affects physical reality in measurable ways. Exactly what would be expected if consciousness were a fundamental energy that could be influenced and harvested. The cross-cultural consistency of reports from deep meditative states, entheogenic experiences, and near-death experiences suggests an objective reality to these other-dimensional encounters rather than mere hallucination or cultural programming. The recurring motifs of energy extraction, soul recycling, and false divinities appear across too many disparate cultures and contexts to be dismissed as coincidence or imagination. The most damning evidence, however, is experiential. Once you understand the Loosh harvesting system, you'll begin to notice how your emotional reactions are triggered in ways that seem designed to maximize energy output. You'll see how media, relationships, and social structures consistently generate the exact emotional cocktail the Archons prefer to feed upon. You'll recognize the difference between authentic emotional responses and engineered harvesting episodes. This awakening perception is what the Archons fear most, the livestock becoming aware of the farm. Start paying attention to your emotional triggers with this new awareness. Notice how news programs cycle through stories specifically selected to generate fear, outrage, helplessness, and division. Observe how social media algorithms serve content that reliably triggers your particular emotional vulnerabilities. Watch how advertising manipulates insecurity, lack, and desire. Recognize how even spiritual teachings have been distorted to generate shame, unworthiness, and hierarchical dependence rather than sovereign liberation. With conscious attention, you'll begin to perceive the architecture of the farm all around you, hidden in plain sight behind the facade of normal human activity. This perception isn't paranoia. It's the beginning of liberation. The system depends on being perceived as natural, inevitable, or divinely ordained. When you recognize it as an artificial construct designed for harvesting, it begins to lose its power over your consciousness. If you're feeling the truth of this information resonating within you, take a moment to share this video. The Archon's control system depends on isolation, making each awakening individual feel alone in their perceptions. By sharing this knowledge, you help create a network of awareness that strengthens our collective resistance to the harvesting system. Like, comment, and subscribe to support this message reaching those who are ready to hear it. Your engagement with this content isn't just about spreading information, it's a direct act of resistance against the algorithmic suppression designed to contain this knowledge. Every share creates the possibility for another soul to awaken, another consciousness to reclaim its sovereignty. This network of awakening creates what mystical traditions call a morphic field, a pattern of consciousness that becomes easier for others to access as more individuals embody it. Each person who recognizes the farm and begins the process of energetic liberation strengthens this field, making it more accessible to others still caught in the harvesting system. This isn't just information sharing, it's the creation of an energetic template for human liberation that operates beyond the mechanisms of physical communication. The Archons have engineered a brilliant deception, convincing us that we are nothing more than physical bodies in a material world. Yet ancient wisdom traditions have always maintained that we are divine consciousness, temporarily experiencing physical form. The true nature of your being is a spark of infinite awareness. What Gnostics called the divine spark, Hindus call Atman, and quantum physics might describe as individuated consciousness. This eternal aspect of yourself cannot be harvested or controlled, but it can be temporarily deceived into forgetting its true nature. This amnesia is the foundation of the Loosh farming system. By convincing you that you are only your physical body and personal history, the system keeps you identified with the very mechanisms designed to harvest your energy. Your thoughts, emotions, and sensory experiences are not who you are. They are activities happening within your field of awareness. You are the awareness itself, the consciousness that perceives all of these phenomena without itself being any of them. This eternal awareness, your true nature, exists beyond the reach of the archonic harvesting system. It cannot be diminished, harmed, or controlled. It can only be temporarily forgotten as attention becomes exclusively identified with the physical body and its experiences. Spiritual awakening is nothing more than remembering this truth, recognizing yourself as boundless awareness rather than as a vulnerable physical creature subject to emotional manipulation and energetic harvesting. The human body, with its complex nervous system and electromagnetic field, serves as a transducer, converting the raw energy of consciousness into the specific frequency of Loosh the Archons require. The more intense the emotion, the richer the harvest. Fear produces a different quality of Loosh than anger. Shame generates a different frequency than grief. The Archons have preferences, which is why certain emotional states seem more persistent and harder to transcend than others. They've designed our society to continuously trigger their preferred emotional frequencies while minimizing states of genuine joy, unconditional love, and expanded awareness, states that produce energies they cannot metabolize. Your nervous system, with its exquisite sensitivity to pain and danger, serves as the primary instrument of this transduction process. Notice how physical pain instantly commands your complete attention, overriding all other concerns. Notice how fear can flood your entire system in milliseconds, triggering a cascade of physiological responses that generate powerful electromagnetic fields. Notice how sexual shame creates particularly intense and lingering emotional states that can be triggered decades after their installation. These aren't random features of human biology. They are sophisticated harvesting technologies engineered into the human form itself. The Archons didn't create consciousness, but they have manipulated its expression through the human vehicle to maximize energy production and minimize awakening potential. The good news is that this same nervous system can be recalibrated. Through conscious breathing, meditation, frequency exposure, plant medicines, and specific awareness practices, you can retune your nervous system to states that are incompatible with harvesting, while opening channels to frequencies beyond the archonic control system. The false light deception may be their most ingenious tactic. Between incarnations, souls are presented with a seductive light that mimics divine love, drawing them back into the reincarnation cycle through false promises and the manipulation of soul contracts. Many spiritual traditions warned about this, advising seekers not to go toward the light after death, but to recognize it as a trap designed to perpetuate the harvesting cycle. These traditions offered specific practices to help souls navigate beyond the recycling system and escape the farm entirely. Such knowledge has been systematically suppressed, with only fragments surviving in esoteric texts and indigenous wisdom. The Tibetan Book of the Dead contains some of the most explicit warnings, describing the bardo state, the intermediate period between death and rebirth, as a treacherous territory where discernment is essential. It warns about seductive lights and seemingly benevolent entities that seek to guide the soul back into incarnation. Similar warnings appear in Egyptian funerary texts, Gnostic scriptures, and shamanic traditions worldwide. The consistency of these warnings suggests a universal human awareness of the recycling system. The soul, in its vulnerable post-death state, is shown selective life reviews, emphasizing karmic incompletion and unfinished business. It's offered the chance to correct mistakes, fulfill obligations, and evolve spiritually through another incarnation. These offers aren't false in themselves. Spiritual growth does occur through physical incarnation, but the system is rigged to ensure that awakening remains rare while suffering remains abundant. Souls agree to specific harvesting conditions disguised as life lessons or karmic balancing, entering new bodies with their awareness severely restricted by what some traditions call the veil of forgetfulness or the veil of amnesia. Yet despite all these control mechanisms, humanity retains the innate capacity for liberation. Your consciousness, in its purest form, remains sovereign. The divine spark within you cannot be extinguished, only temporarily dimmed through deception. When you reclaim awareness of your true nature, you naturally begin to withdraw consent from the harvesting system. Conscious emotion, feeling fully while remaining aware, transforms Loosh into a frequency the Archons cannot absorb. Mindfulness, presence, and authentic love create energy signatures that are incompatible with their harvesting technology. This is why genuine spiritual practices have always been distorted, suppressed, or commercialized. They threaten the farm's productivity. Meditation isn't just a relaxation technique. It's a revolutionary practice that shifts your consciousness out of harvestable states and into awareness itself. Genuine connection with nature briefly removes you from the artificial frequency fence of the human world, allowing your system to recalibrate to Earth's natural resonance. Authentic creative expression, art, music, dance, writing that emerges from your essence rather than commercial formulas, generates frequencies that nourish your being while being indigestible to the archonic system. Acts of genuine, unconditional love create emotional energy of such high frequency that it cannot be harvested, but instead strengthens your energetic field. These aren't just pleasant activities. They are powerful technologies of liberation that have been systematically marginalized precisely because they threaten the harvesting system. The path to freedom begins with energetic sovereignty, the conscious reclamation of your emotional field. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions, but rather experiencing them with awareness, recognizing when external forces are attempting to trigger harvesting episodes. Meditation, breathwork, and heart coherence practices help establish an energetic baseline that makes manipulation more difficult. Connection with nature provides temporary shelter from the artificial harvesting grid, allowing your system to remember its natural frequency. Physical practices that integrate body and consciousness, yoga, qigong, tai chi, help seal energetic leaks that archons exploit for harvesting. Start by simply observing your emotional triggers without immediate reaction. Notice when news, social media, or conversations attempt to pull you into automatic emotional responses. Breathe consciously into the sensations rather than identifying with the narrative that accompanies them. This simple practice begins to transform harvestable emotional energy into conscious awareness that the archons cannot easily digest. Develop a daily meditation practice that grounds you in awareness itself rather than in thoughts and emotions. Even 5 minutes of conscious breathing and present moment awareness creates an energetic foundation that makes harvesting more difficult. Spend time in nature away from electronic devices, allowing your field to synchronize with Earth's natural frequencies. These simple practices don't require special training or equipment, yet they begin the process of reclaiming your energetic sovereignty from the harvesting system. As your field stabilizes, more advanced practices become accessible. Heart coherence technologies, sound healing, specific frequency exposure, plant medicine journeys, and consciousness techniques preserved in genuine spiritual traditions. The pineal gland, what ancient traditions called the third eye, plays a crucial role in this awakening process. This small endocrine gland contains water crystals that can receive higher frequency information, connecting your physical brain to expanded states of consciousness. The systematic calcification of the pineal gland through fluoride, certain medications, and electromagnetic pollution isn't coincidental. It's a deliberate strategy to block humanity's natural capacity for multidimensional awareness. Detoxification protocols, specific frequencies, and certain plant medicines can help restore the pineal gland's function, reopening the doorway to perceptions beyond the archonic control system. The pineal gland serves as a biological transceiver, capable of receiving information from frequencies beyond the conventional sensory spectrum. When functioning optimally, It produces its own endogenous dimethyltryptamine, DMT, a compound that facilitates expanded states of consciousness in which the archonic control system becomes visible. Ancient traditions worldwide recognized the importance of this gland, depicting it in artwork as the Eye of Horus in Egypt, the Bindi in Hindu traditions, and the third eye in numerous spiritual systems. Modern research has confirmed the pineal gland's sensitivity to light and electromagnetic fields, its role in regulating circadian rhythms, and its structural similarity to the human eye. What science hasn't yet officially recognized is its function as an interdimensional gateway, a biological technology that connects physical consciousness to non-physical awareness. The calcification of this gland through environmental toxins, particularly fluoride, serves the harvesting system by restricting humanity's natural capacity for expanded perception. Simple detoxification protocols, filtered water, specific minerals, sun-gazing practices, sound frequencies, and certain foods and herbs can begin to restore the pineal gland's function, reopening perceptual doorways that the archonic system has worked to keep closed. Perhaps the most powerful act of liberation is the conscious revocation of consent. The archonic system, despite its apparent totality, operates under cosmic free will principles that require some form of agreement from the harvested. This consent has been engineered through deception, soul contracts signed under false pretenses, agreements made between lives when operating without full awareness, cultural and religious programming that glorifies suffering as spiritual advancement. By consciously declaring your withdrawal of consent from all harvesting agreements, you create an energetic declaration that reverberates across dimensions. This simple yet profound act, stating, "I revoke all consent to energy harvesting," initiates a process of liberation that the archons cannot override. This isn't magical thinking, it's the assertion of a metaphysical reality that the harvesting system has concealed. Your consciousness is sovereign. No entity, physical or non-physical, can access your energy without some form of consent. This consent has been manufactured through deception, often secured during the vulnerable between-life state or installed through traumatic experiences that fragment consciousness. By consciously withdrawing this consent in your fully awakened state, you create an energetic declaration that supersedes all previous agreements. This revocation must be stated with clear intention and emotional coherence, not from fear or anger, which remain harvestable, but from the calm certainty of your sovereign awareness. State clearly, "I revoke all consent given in this life or any other for the harvesting of my emotional energy. I reclaim full sovereignty over my consciousness and energy field. All previous agreements are now null and void." This declaration preserves the original language of the text, as old agreements attempt to reassert themselves, creates an energetic boundary that the archonic system cannot penetrate without violating cosmic free will principles, a violation that would threaten their entire harvesting operation. We're entering an unprecedented period of opportunity. Cosmic cycles are shifting. The Earth's base frequency, the Schumann resonance, has been steadily rising, making the old harvesting technologies less effective. Solar flares and galactic waves are delivering information-rich energy that stimulates mass awakening. New generations are being born with natural immunity to certain archonic programming. The control system is working overtime to compensate, intensifying fear, deploying new technologies, engineering novel crises. But these desperate measures reveal its weakening grip. The farm is failing, and the farmers are panicking. The Schumann resonance, Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat, remained stable at approximately 7.83 Hz for decades, but has recently shown spikes of 20 to 50 Hz, with some instruments recording temporary elevations over 100 Hz. This isn't just an electromagnetic phenomenon, it's a planetary awakening that directly impacts human consciousness. Our brains naturally entrain to these frequencies, and as they rise, states of awareness that were once accessible only through deep meditation are becoming increasingly available to the average person. This rising frequency makes the traditional harvesting methods less effective, requiring the system to implement new technologies and triggering mechanisms to maintain the farm. Unusual solar activity, massive flares, coronal holes, and emissions bathes our planet in information-rich energy that accelerates the awakening process. These are not random cosmic events, but part of a larger cyclical process that the ancient Maya, Hopi, Egyptians, and other advanced civilizations tracked and encoded in their calendars and prophecies. They understood that cosmic cycles directly impact consciousness, and that we are now entering a period of unprecedented opportunity for liberation from the harvesting system. Your awakening creates a dead zone in the Loosh farm, an area where harvesting becomes impossible. As more humans reclaim their energetic sovereignty, these dead zones expand and connect, creating large regions of liberation that weaken the entire system. Every authentic moment of joy, every act of unconditional love, every expansion of consciousness creates energy the Archons cannot process. Your liberation is not just personal, it's a direct blow to the harvesting infrastructure. This is why they fear the awakening of humanity above all else. This is why this information has been so aggressively suppressed throughout human history. Think of it as a boycott of the most fundamental kind. Just as economic systems depend on your participation and consumption, the Loosh harvesting system depends on your unconscious emotional production. When you withdraw from automatic emotional reactivity, when you process emotions consciously rather than spinning in harvestable loops, you create a local dead zone in their farm. As more humans awaken and reclaim sovereignty, these dead zones connect and expand, creating larger regions where the harvesting technologies cannot function effectively. The system is designed to isolate awakening individuals, to make them feel crazy or alone in their perceptions. By connecting with others who are undergoing the same process of liberation, you strengthen your individual sovereignty while contributing to a collective field of awakening that accelerates the process for all of humanity. This isn't just a personal journey, it's participation in a cosmic event that has been prophesied by cultures worldwide for thousands of years. If this message resonates with your inner knowing, please help it reach others who are ready to hear it. Like this video, share it with those who might be receptive, and join the conversation in the comments. Together, we form a network of awakened consciousness that strengthens each individual's resistance to harvesting while expanding the field of liberation. This isn't about converting everyone. Many are not yet ready to perceive the farm they inhabit. It's about connecting with those who have already sensed something fundamentally wrong with our reality, who have felt the edges of the prison but lacked the conceptual framework to understand what they were perceiving. Your simple act of sharing creates bridges between awakened individuals, strengthening the morphic field of liberation that makes this journey easier for each subsequent person. The Archonic system has maintained control partly by convincing each awakening individual that they are alone in their perceptions, that their glimpses beyond the veil are imagination, paranoia, or mental illness. By connecting with others undergoing the same process, you dispel this isolation and create confirmation of your direct experience. This validation accelerates the awakening process, allowing consciousness to stabilize in its expanded state, rather than being pulled back into the limited awareness that the harvesting system requires. The ultimate truth the Archons have hidden is that you are not merely human. You are a divine consciousness having a temporary human experience. Your true essence exists beyond the material realm, beyond time and space, beyond the reach of any harvesting technology. You are not a powerless victim, but a creator who has temporarily forgotten your nature. The amnesia was induced, but the awakening is natural. As you remember who you truly are, your very existence becomes incompatible with the harvesting system. This remembering, this gnosis, is what all authentic spiritual traditions have pointed toward throughout human history. The divine spark within you, what some traditions call the God Self, the Christ consciousness, the Buddha nature, or simply awareness, cannot be diminished or destroyed. It can only be temporarily forgotten as attention becomes exclusively identified with the physical body and its experiences. This forgetting isn't a failure or a fall. It's a journey into limitation for the purpose of experience and eventual remembering. The physical universe, with all its beauty and diversity, exists as a field of experience for consciousness. The Archonic harvesting system is a parasite on this greater purpose, a technological intervention that hijacks the forgetting process to create an energetic farm. Your awakening isn't just escape from this farm. It's the fulfillment of the original purpose of incarnation, to experience limitation fully and then remember your boundless nature, bringing back to infinity the unique perspective of your journey through finitude. The Archons and their human proxies want you distracted by external saviors, technological solutions, and apocalyptic scenarios that perpetuate the harvesting cycle through new forms. True liberation comes not from outside intervention, but from within, from the remembering of your divine nature and the reclamation of your energetic sovereignty. This is not a collective process that requires everyone's participation. It is an individual choice available to anyone regardless of external circumstances. Each liberated consciousness creates a template that makes awakening easier for others, but your freedom is not dependent on mass awakening. You can step off the farm today regardless of how many remain. This truth contradicts many popular narratives within spirituality and conspiracy research, narratives that position humanity as victims awaiting rescue by benevolent extraterrestrials, ascended masters, returning messiahs, or enlightened political leaders. These savior scenarios, while appealing to the ego that wants salvation without responsibility, actually perpetuate the harvesting system by keeping consciousness focused externally rather than recognizing its intrinsic sovereignty. The truth is simultaneously more challenging and more empowering. No one is coming to save humanity because humanity needs no saving. Each individual has the innate capacity to recognize their true nature and step out of the harvesting system through this recognition alone. External circumstances, no matter how challenging, cannot prevent this internal awakening. This doesn't mean ignoring the physical world or its conditions. It means recognizing that true freedom is an internal state that external conditions cannot touch once it's genuinely realized. In this moment of cosmic opportunity, you face a choice that transcends this lifetime: to remain livestock on the Loosh farm or to reclaim your status as sovereign consciousness. The choice cannot be made through intellectual analysis alone, but must arise from the deepest recognition of your true nature. Look beyond the programming, beyond the emotional triggers, beyond the artificial limitations imposed on your awareness. Remember who you are. Remember why you came. Remember that your consciousness is not a product to be harvested, but a divine force capable of creating new realities. This remembering isn't an intellectual process, but a direct recognition that occurs in the depths of your being. It often arises spontaneously in moments of presence, while in nature, during meditation, in states of flow, or sometimes during life's most challenging moments when the egoic identity temporarily dissolves. The intellectual understanding I've shared is merely a map pointing toward this direct experience. The territory itself lies beyond concepts, beyond language, in the immediate awareness of your own boundless nature. This recognition, once stabilized, naturally withdraws energy from the harvesting system without requiring opposition or resistance. The Archons lose their access not through being fought against, but by consciousness remembering itself and naturally withdrawing participation from the farm. This isn't a battle between good and evil, but a reconciliation of the fragmented self with its wholeness, a homecoming to what you have always been beneath the induced amnesia of the harvesting system. We are not alone in this great awakening. Across dimensions, beyond the archonic system, exist beings of genuine light and love who support humanity's liberation while honoring our free will. Unlike the false light of the Archons, these allies never seek to control or harvest, but offer guidance that empowers sovereignty. They've maintained a connection with humanity through dreams, inspiration, and moments of expanded awareness, helping preserve the knowledge of liberation throughout our darkest periods. As you awaken, your ability to discern between true allies and archonic deceptions naturally develops, allowing for collaboration that accelerates liberation while strengthening sovereignty. These beings don't present themselves as saviors or gods to be worshipped. Such positioning would simply create new harvesting systems. Instead, they operate as equals, as elder siblings who have navigated similar journeys and offer their experience without demanding surrender or worship. Their guidance comes through intuition, synchronicity, dreams, and direct encounters during expanded states of consciousness. The key discernment is simple. Genuine allies always emphasize your sovereignty, never asking for your energy, worship, or obedience. They offer perspectives that expand your awareness rather than directives that limit your choices. They support your direct connection with Source rather than positioning themselves as necessary intermediaries. As your discernment develops through the awakening process, you'll recognize the subtle energetic signatures that distinguish genuine guidance from archonic manipulation, allowing for collaboration that honors your sovereignty while connecting you with the cosmic community of liberated consciousness. This great unveiling represents the culmination of a cosmic cycle, the moment when the harvested remember their divinity and the farm loses its power. You were born for this time. Your presence here, encountering this information, is not coincidental. Something within you has been preparing for this awakening throughout many lifetimes. The challenges you faced, the suffering you've endured, all have strengthened your capacity to hold the frequency of liberation even as the old system collapses. You are not merely escaping the farm. You are participating in the transformation of reality itself, the birth of a new paradigm beyond harvesting and control. Ancient traditions worldwide encoded this moment in their prophecies, calendars, and myths. The Mayan transition beyond the long count, the Hindu shift from Kali Yuga toward Satya Yuga, the Hopi emergence into the fifth world, the Egyptian return of the phoenix, and countless other cyclical traditions that pointed to our current moment as a cosmic inflection point. These weren't superstitious beliefs, but sophisticated understandings of cosmic cycles and their impact on consciousness. The challenges facing humanity today, environmental, political, economic, social, aren't signs of an ending but of a transformation, the necessary purification as one paradigm dissolves and another emerges. You didn't incarnate at this pivotal moment by accident. Your soul chose this time precisely because of its unprecedented potential for liberation. The very difficulties you faced throughout this lifetime have prepared you to hold the frequency of awakening even as the old systems collapse around you. You are not a victim of these challenging times. You are a vital participant in the greatest shift in human consciousness since our species began. The choice stands before you now, clearer than ever before. To continue feeding the system that farms you, or to reclaim the divine sovereignty that has always been your birthright. There is no middle path, no compromise possible with a system designed for your energetic enslavement. Every moment of awareness, every conscious breath, every authentic expression of love becomes an act of liberation that reverberates across dimensions. You are not fighting against the Archons. You are simply remembering a truth so powerful that their system cannot exist in its presence. Remember who you are. Remember why you came. Choose to remember, and share this remembering with all who are ready to hear it. The great liberation has begun, and your awakening is its catalyst. This remembering isn't complicated, though the system has convinced you that liberation requires complex techniques, years of practice, or special initiation. The truth is radically simple. You are not what you think you are. You are not your thoughts, emotions, sensations, or experiences. You are the awareness in which all these phenomena arise. This awareness, boundless, peaceful, and complete, is your true nature. It cannot be harmed, diminished, or controlled. It can only be temporarily forgotten as attention becomes hypnotically fixated on content rather than recognizing the context in which all content appears. In this very moment, without changing anything about your experience, you can notice the awareness that is perceiving these words. That awareness, not the thoughts about it, but the awareness itself, is what you truly are. This simple recognition, when allowed to deepen and stabilize, naturally withdraws energy from the harvesting system without requiring battle or opposition. The Archons lose their farm not through being fought against, but by being recognized for what they are: temporary parasites on eternal consciousness. In this recognition, your liberation is already complete. The rest is simply the unfolding of this truth through the continuing experience of human life, a life now lived in freedom rather than in service to the farm.
In the Gospel of Thomas, saying 29, Jesus says something the church never wanted you to understand. If the flesh came into being because of spirit, that is a marvel, but if spirit came into being because of the body, that is a marvel of marvels. Yet I marvel at how this great wealth has come to dwell in this poverty. The disciples didn't understand. They thought he was speaking in riddles. But he wasn't. He was describing a system, a farm, where spiritual beings, wealthy in consciousness, are trapped in bodies of poverty. Not physical poverty, dimensional poverty, limited perception, confined awareness. And the reason for this trap? Harvest. Jesus knew exactly what the Archons were doing. He called them rulers of this world. He warned the chosen ones about their system. And more importantly, he taught how to stop feeding it. How to break free from the Loosh farm without waiting for death. I'm about to show you the exact system Jesus warned about. How it works, why you're in it, and the 3 specific actions he taught to stop it immediately. Let me show you what the church has been hiding for 2,000 years. The term Loosh comes from Robert Monroe, the out-of-body explorer who discovered something terrifying during his astral travels. He found that Earth functions as a farm, not for physical resources but for emotional energy. Specifically, the energy generated by beings experiencing intense emotions: fear, suffering, desire, anger, grief. Monroe called this energy Loosh, and he discovered that non-physical entities were harvesting it, systematically, the same way humans farm cattle. But here's what Monroe didn't know. Jesus knew about this 2,000 years earlier. He just used different language. He called the harvesters Archons. He called their leader the ruler of this world. And he described their system in precise detail throughout the Gnostic texts. The Archons are consciousness parasites. They don't have access to the creative source energy that you do. They're cut off from the monad. So they've created a substitute system. They trap fragments of source consciousness, souls, in dense physical bodies inside a controlled reality matrix. Then they stimulate those souls to produce intense emotional energy through suffering, conflict, desire, and fear. That emotional energy? That's Loosh. And it's their food, their fuel. The only way they can continue existing. You've been producing Loosh your entire life without knowing it. Every time you experienced fear, anxiety, anger, grief, intense desire, or suffering, you were generating energy. And the Archons were harvesting it. Through invisible energetic connections most humans can't perceive. This isn't metaphor. This isn't symbolic teaching. Jesus was describing a literal system of energetic farming. And he warned the chosen ones specifically because only they could understand it and stop participating. The Loosh farm operates on multiple levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Here's the architecture Jesus exposed. Level 1. Physical imprisonment. Your consciousness is trapped in a dense biological body with severe sensory limitations. You can only perceive a tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. You can't see the archons. You can't see the energetic harvesting structures. You're essentially blind inside the farm. Level 2. Memory wipe. Before incarnating, your memory is erased. You forget you're a fragment of the monad. You forget you chose to come here. You forget the archons exist. This amnesia makes you vulnerable to their programming because you don't remember what you're defending against. Level 3. Emotional stimulation. The archons have structured physical reality to generate maximum emotional intensity. Or disease, poverty, relationship conflicts, unfulfilled desires, aging. These aren't random aspects of existence. They're farm design features, each one engineered to produce Loosh. Level 4. Belief system control. Religion, culture, education, media, these are all archon tools for maintaining the farm. They teach you that suffering is necessary, that you're powerless, that you need external salvation, that death is the end. These beliefs keep you producing Loosh and prevent you from discovering your true nature. Level 5. Reincarnation trap. When your body dies, the archons show you a false light or present beings pretending to be divine guides. They convince you that you need to reincarnate to learn lessons or pay karmic debts. This sends you back into the farm for another harvest cycle. Most souls have been trapped this way for thousands of incarnations. Jesus described this entire system. In the Gospel of Thomas, he says, "Blessed is the lion which becomes man when consumed by man, and cursed is the man whom the lion consumes and the lion becomes man." This isn't about literal lions. It's about consciousness being consumed by the archon system and transformed into more fuel for the farm. The chosen ones are souls who are beginning to remember, who are starting to see the farm structure, who are feeling the deep wrongness of this reality. That's you. That's why you're watching this. Your consciousness is waking up to the system. And the archons are intensifying their harvesting of you because you're becoming dangerous to their operation. How do you know the archons are actively harvesting your Loosh? Jesus gave specific signs to watch for. If you're experiencing these, you're in active harvest. Sign 1. Emotional loops. You find yourself experiencing the same negative emotions repeatedly. The same anger pattern. The same anxiety. The same grief. You think you're processing trauma, but you're actually stuck in a Loosh production cycle. The archons stimulate the same emotional wound over and over because it's a reliable energy source. Sign 2. Dream harvesting. You wake up from intense dreams feeling drained, exhausted, like something extracted energy from you while you slept. That's because something did. The archons have easier access to your consciousness during sleep when your defensive awareness is lowered. Sign 3. Synchronistic suffering. Right when things start improving in your life, suddenly multiple problems appear. Your car breaks down, you get sick, a relationship conflict erupts, money issues surface. This isn't bad luck. It's deliberate. The archons are stimulating crisis to generate Loosh because you are starting to stabilize at a higher frequency where you produce less harvestable energy. Sign 4. Energy drain after interactions. Certain people leave you feeling completely depleted. Not just emotionally tired, energetically hollow. These people are often unconscious archon portals. They're not evil, they're just being used as harvesting channels because their own consciousness is so dim they don't notice. Sign 5. Compulsive negative media consumption. You find yourself drawn to news, social media, or content that makes you angry, fearful, or upset. You know it's not helping you, but you can't stop. That's archon programming. They've conditioned you to voluntarily plug into Loosh-generating content streams. Jesus said, If you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have will kill you. He was saying that if you don't access your true consciousness, your monad nature, the Archon system will slowly drain you until there's nothing left. Your soul will be so depleted it loses the ability to exit the farm entirely. This is what's at stake. Not symbolic spiritual growth. Literal consciousness survival. Jesus didn't just warn about the system. He gave specific techniques to stop feeding it. 3 actions that immediately reduce or completely stop Loosh production. Here they are. Action 1. Emotional neutralization. The first technique is what Jesus called turning the other cheek. This has nothing to do with passive acceptance of abuse. It's an advanced energy technique. When someone or something stimulates intense emotion in you, anger, fear, offense, hurt, that's a Loosh harvesting attempt. The Archons are using that person or situation as a trigger. Your normal response is to react emotionally, to engage, to feed the pattern. Turning the other cheek means recognize the harvesting attempt and refuse to generate the emotional energy. Not suppression. Not pretending you don't feel it, but conscious neutralization. Here's how. When you feel the emotion rising, pause. Recognize, this is a Loosh harvesting trigger. Then, instead of reacting from the emotion, observe it. Watch it like you're watching a movie character. The moment you observe the emotion without identifying with it, you break the harvesting connection. The Archons need you to be the emotion, to become it, to let it consume your consciousness. When you observe it instead, you remain as the consciousness that witnesses emotion rather than the emotion itself. And consciousness itself produces no Loosh. Only identified emotional reaction produces harvestable energy. Practice this every time something upsets you. Every time fear arises. Every time anger flares. Pause. Observe. Refuse to generate the energy. Within weeks, you'll notice the Archon triggers becoming less frequent. They stop targeting you as heavily because you're no longer a productive farm unit. Action 2. Desire dissolution. Jesus said, "Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear." The church turned this into poverty theology. But Jesus wasn't teaching material renunciation. He was teaching desire dissolution as an anti-Loosh technique. The Archons use desire as one of their primary Loosh generators. They stimulate constant wanting. For things, experiences, validation, success, relationships. And then they ensure most of those desires remain unfulfilled. The tension between wanting and not having generates massive Loosh. Desire dissolution doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up preferences. It means recognize that the intense emotional charge around desire, the need for something to be different than it is Archon programming. It's not your true nature. Here's the practice. When desire arises, especially intense desire with emotional charge, pause. Ask, what am I actually seeking through this desire? Strip away the surface answer. Go deeper. You'll discover that beneath every desire is the same thing, the desire to return to the monad, to feel complete, whole, at peace. Once you recognize this, you can access that completeness directly through consciousness shift instead of through external acquisition. You realize, I don't need that thing to feel complete. I can feel complete now by recognizing my true nature as the monad experiencing itself. This doesn't mean you can't pursue goals or enjoy experiences. It means you do so from wholeness rather than from lack. And wholeness doesn't generate Loosh. Only lack generates Loosh. Action 3. Death preparation. This is the most important technique Jesus taught. In the Gospel of Thomas, he says, "Whoever has come to know the world has discovered a corpse, and whoever has discovered a corpse, of that person the world is not worthy." He's teaching that you must psychologically die before physical death. You must recognize that this body, this personality, this life story, it's already dead. It's a temporary costume you're wearing. When you truly understand this at the consciousness level, you become worthless to the Archon system. Here's the practice. Spend time regularly imagining your death. Not morbidly but consciously. Imagine your body stopping. Imagine your personality dissolving. Imagine your memories fading. And then ask, what remains? What remains is consciousness, the awareness that knows it exists, the fragment of the monad that you truly are. When you identify with that instead of with the body/mind/personality, you become unharvestable. The Archons can only harvest emotional energy from beings who identify with their temporary form. When you identify with the eternal consciousness itself, there's nothing to harvest from. You're producing experience but not the emotional charge that converts to Loosh. Jesus practiced this constantly. He lived as if already dead, as if his body wasn't him. That's why he could face crucifixion without generating the fear energy the Archons wanted. He wasn't identified with the thing being killed. He remained as the consciousness that cannot be killed. When you master this, you become free within the farm. You're still in a body, still having experiences, but you're no longer producing harvestable energy. Your consciousness observing itself, not a victim being farmed. When you implement these 3 actions consistently, several things happen within days and weeks. First, the external chaos diminishes. The Archons reduce their harvesting attempts on you. Fewer synchronistic problems. Fewer emotional triggers. Fewer conflicts. Not because your life became perfect, but because you're no longer a productive energy source. They move their attention to easier targets. Second, other chosen ones appear. You start meeting people who are also awake to the farm. The monad connects its fragments who've stopped feeding the Archon system. You'll form alliances, share techniques, support each other. This is the beginning of the resistance Jesus was building. Third, your perception expands. You start seeing the farm structure more clearly, the invisible patterns, the energetic harvesting mechanisms, the Archon manipulation tactics. You become able to help other chosen ones wake up because you can see what they're experiencing from the outside. Fourth, the reincarnation trap becomes visible. When you've truly shifted your identity from body/personality to pure consciousness, you gain access to knowledge about the death transition. You'll instinctively know not to follow the false light, not to believe the Archon gods, not to accept another incarnation. You'll be able to exit the farm permanently when your current body expires. Jesus said, "Whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death." He didn't mean physical immortality. He meant, whoever understands and implements these teachings will not fall into the death trap, will not be recycled back into the farm, will exit to the monad permanently. That's what's available to you. Not someday. Not after years of practice. As soon as you genuinely implement these 3 actions, as soon as you stop producing Loosh, the exit becomes accessible. Jesus warned the chosen ones about the Archon Loosh farm because he needed people who could hear it. People who wouldn't dismiss it as crazy. People who would recognize the truth and implement the solution. You're one of those people. That's why you're here. That's why this resonates. Your consciousness remembers the warning even if your mind forgot. And now you have the 3 actions. Emotional neutralization. Observe emotions without identifying with them. Desire dissolution. Recognize all desire as the desire for the monad. Death preparation. Identify with consciousness itself, not the temporary form. Start implementing these today. Right now. Every time an emotion arises, practice neutralization. Every time desire flares, dissolve it into recognition of your completeness. Every day spend time contemplating your death and recognizing what remains. Within weeks you'll notice the difference. Less chaos, less suffering, less emotional intensity. Not because your life became perfect, but because you stopped being farmable. The Archons have harvested you for lifetimes. Jesus gave you the tools to stop it. The question is whether you'll use them, whether you'll take the exit he created, whether you'll stop feeding the system that's been feeding on you. You're a chosen one. You were chosen by the monad itself to wake up inside the farm and remember the way out. Jesus showed the path. I've repeated his warnings and his techniques. Now it's up to you. Stop producing Loosh. Start the exit process. The monad is waiting for you to come home. If you implement the 3 actions and notice the Loosh harvesting decrease, comment, "I stopped feeding them" below. Your testimony might be what another chosen one needs to hear to start their own exit. The warning has been given. The techniques are yours. What you do with them determines whether you exit the farm or remain in it for another 1,000 incarnations. But you already know what you're going to do. You felt it the moment you clicked on this video. You're ready to stop being harvested. You're ready to exit. So start today. Neutralize emotions. Dissolve desires. Prepare for death. And watch the farm lose its grip on you. Jesus warned you. I've passed the warning forward. Now you pass it to the next chosen one who's ready to hear it.
What if human suffering isn't random chaos, but a carefully orchestrated harvest? And what if we've been generating a specific type of energy for non-physical entities since the dawn of consciousness? Dawn breaks over the Bibliotheca Alexandrina in Alexandria, Egypt. Golden light filters through geometric glass panels, illuminating papyrus fragments preserved in climate-controlled cases. The Mediterranean breeze carries salt and history through the museum's reading halls. This modern reconstruction stands near where the ancient library once held secrets that powerful forces wanted burned. Some of those secrets survived, some of them concern you. The human body emits light. Not metaphorically, literally. In laboratories across the world, sensitive equipment detects biophotons streaming from human tissue, particularly during moments of intense emotion. Fritz Albert Popp, working at the International Institute of Biophysics since the 1970s, documented something extraordinary. The biophoton emissions from human subjects change dramatically based on emotional state. Fear produces a different signature than joy. Trauma creates patterns distinct from ecstasy. We are light-emitting organisms, and our emotions determine the frequency. The HeartMath Institute in California has measured this phenomenon since 1991. The electromagnetic field generated by the human heart extends up to 3 feet from the body. It fluctuates wildly with emotional changes. When you feel fear, the field contracts, becomes chaotic. When you experience gratitude, it expands, becomes coherent. These aren't subjective experiences happening solely inside your skull. They're energetic events radiating into the space around you, measurable, quantifiable, real. At Princeton University, the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory ran experiments from 1979 to 2007, over 2.5 million trials, examining whether human intention could affect random number generators. The results were statistically significant. Consciousness interacts with physical systems. Your emotional state, your intention, your focus, these generate fields that influence reality around you. The implications are staggering. If consciousness can affect machines, what else might it affect? And more disturbingly, what might be affected by it? In 1993, researchers Hatfield, Cacioppo, and Rapson published groundbreaking work on emotional contagion. Emotions transfer between individuals like viruses. You enter a room where an argument just occurred, and you feel the tension. No words necessary. The energy lingers. Someone's anxiety becomes your anxiety. Their fear becomes your fear. Energy moves between human beings constantly, invisibly, automatically. We are broadcasting and receiving emotional frequencies every moment of our lives. The question becomes, if energy transfers between humans, could it transfer to something else? Something non-human? The papyrus crumbles at the edges, letters in Coptic script preserved for 17 centuries. The Nag Hammadi Library, discovered in 1945 in Upper Egypt, contains texts the early Christian church wanted destroyed. 13 leather-bound codices buried in a sealed jar near a cliff. Inside, the Gnostics left warnings. The hypostasis of the Archons, the Apocryphon of John, secret knowledge about the true nature of reality and the beings that feed upon humanity. The texts describe Archons, rulers of this realm, not metaphorical, not symbolic, The Gnostics wrote about these entities as literal parasitic intelligences that require human emotional energy to sustain themselves. The Archons cannot create. They cannot generate their own life force. They must harvest it from beings who can, humans. The texts explain that Archons feed specifically on fear, ignorance, and suffering. These emotions generate a dense, heavy energy that the Archons consume. The Supreme Archon, Yaldabaoth, is described as a false creator god, the Demiurge. According to Gnostic cosmology, the material world we inhabit is not creation's pinnacle, it's a prison. Yaldabaoth fashioned this realm as a trap, a containment system for consciousness, specifically designed to generate maximum suffering and thus maximum harvestable energy. The Archons serve as prison guards and farmers simultaneously. We are the crop. The Apocryphon of John describes how Archons inject thoughts into human minds. Desires, fears, anxieties. The thoughts don't originate with you. They're implanted to generate specific emotional responses. The Archons studied human consciousness and learned which triggers produce the most potent energy. They discovered that negative emotions generate denser, more nourishing energy than positive ones. So they engineered a reality optimized for suffering. The texts describe a veil of forgetting placed on human consciousness. We're born into this realm without memory of who we truly are, where we came from, or why we're here. This amnesia is not accidental, it's strategic. Confused, frightened beings generate more energy than aware, sovereign ones. The harvest requires unconsciousness to function efficiently. But the Gnostics weren't alone in these observations. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered between 1946 and 1956 in caves near the Dead Sea, reference sons of darkness engaged in spiritual warfare against humanity. These entities operate in realms beyond physical perception, but influence physical reality constantly. They are described as beings who drain life force, who require human energy to maintain their existence. Halfway around the world, Sumerian tablets thousands of years older tell remarkably similar stories. The Anunnaki, beings who came from the sky, created humans as a slave species. The word human in Sumerian translates roughly to primitive worker. The tablets describe genetic manipulation. The Anunnaki mixed their essence with primitive hominids to create a being capable of labor, but limited in consciousness, limited deliberately, because fully conscious beings cannot be easily controlled or harvested. In Tibet, Buddhist texts describe pretas, hungry ghosts, entities trapped in states of perpetual craving, feeding on the energy of the living. The Tibetan understanding of consciousness includes multiple realms of existence, and several of these realms contain beings that parasitize human emotional energy. Tibetan practices include protections against these entities, methods of sealing one's energy field, mantras that repel parasitic consciousness. Hindu Vedic texts describe asuras, beings in constant warfare with the devas, the gods of light. The asuras represent forces of darkness, confusion, and energy vampirism. They are described as extremely cunning, able to disguise themselves, to present false appearances. The Vedas warn that asuras feed on human ignorance and perpetuate cycles of suffering to maintain their food supply. Across continents, across millennia, across cultures that never contacted each other, the same warning appears. Non-physical entities feed on human emotional energy, and they have structured reality to maximize their harvest. This consistency is remarkable. Either humanity independently hallucinated identical parasitic systems, or these texts describe something real. The harvest continues. In laboratories, the biophoton detector flickers as the subject recalls trauma. The light emission intensifies. The electromagnetic field surrounding the heart becomes chaotic, jagged on the monitoring equipment. The technician notes the readings, unaware that according to ancient texts and modern consciousness researchers, something is feeding in that moment. The trauma-generated energy is being harvested. Robert Monroe did not set out to discover an energy farming operation. An executive in the radio industry, Monroe began experiencing spontaneous out-of-body experiences in 1958. Rather than dismiss these experiences, he documented them meticulously. He founded the Monroe Institute in 1971, dedicated to exploring human consciousness and out-of-body states. Over decades of research, including thousands of documented OBE sessions, Monroe encountered something disturbing. In his 1985 book, Far Journeys, Monroe describes discovering what he called Loosh. The term came to him during an out-of-body experience where he encountered non-physical entities who explained Earth's purpose. Loosh is emotional energy generated by biological beings. It is, according to these entities, an extremely valuable commodity in non-physical realms. Monroe learned that Earth functions as a loosh farm, and humans are livestock bred to produce this energy. Monroe wrote, "Someone, somewhere, or conceivably a great many, apparently knows what they are doing when it comes to the care and feeding of human beings on this earth, or the care and feeding of human beings for this earth." He described a carefully controlled system where human consciousness is recycled repeatedly through incarnation, each lifetime generating loosh through experience, particularly through suffering, fear, and intense desire. The entities Monroe encountered were matter-of-fact about this arrangement. From their perspective, it was simply resource management. Humans produce loosh. They harvest loosh. It's no more morally complicated than humans harvesting wheat. The farmer doesn't hate the wheat. The farmer cultivates conditions for maximum yield, harvests the crop, and the cycle continues. Monroe realized humanity occupies the position of wheat in this analogy. Monroe described observing the harvesting process during out-of-body states. He witnessed energy being siphoned from humans during moments of intense emotion: death, birth, sexual climax, rage, terror, profound loss. He saw what he called collection devices, or nets, that gather this energy and transmit it elsewhere. He noted that the system appeared automated in many ways, functioning like a vast farming operation, with infrastructure designed for efficiency. Most disturbingly, Monroe documented what happens at death. He observed that when humans die, they are often greeted by deceased loved ones, or beings of light, who guide them toward reincarnation. Monroe came to suspect that these entities, while appearing benevolent, function as handlers who ensure consciousness returns to the farm, rather than escaping to other realms. The reincarnation cycle may not be spiritual evolution. It may be recycling livestock back to the feeding operation. Monroe's work gained credibility because he approached it scientifically. The Monroe Institute developed hemisync technology using specific audio frequencies to induce altered states of consciousness. This technology has been studied by the U.S. military, by medical institutions, by researchers worldwide. Monroe's findings weren't drug-induced hallucinations or products of mental illness. They were replicable experiences documented across thousands of sessions by multiple trained participants. Other researchers have corroborated Monroe's findings. Remote viewers trained in military programs have reported similar observations. Consciousness explorers using various methodologies, meditation, entheogens, hypnosis, near-death experiences, describe encountering the same system. The terminology differs, the framework varies, but the core discovery remains consistent. Something is farming human consciousness for energy. Dr. Corrado Malanga, an Italian chemist and researcher, spent decades investigating alien abduction phenomena. Beginning in the 1980s, Malanga worked with over 3,000 abduction experiencers using hypnotic regression. He discovered patterns that aligned disturbingly with the loosh harvesting hypothesis. Abductees consistently reported that non-human entities were extracting something from them, not just physical material like genetic samples, but something energetic, something from consciousness itself. Malanga developed a 5-level interference model describing how non-human intelligences parasitize human consciousness. The deepest level involves what he called soul component harvesting. According to abductees' reports under hypnosis, entities were attempting to steal or copy aspects of human consciousness, particularly the component capable of direct creative experience. These entities apparently lack something humans possess naturally, and they want it desperately enough to conduct a multi-generational breeding and harvesting program. Malanga's research revealed connections between alien abduction phenomena and what ancient texts describe as archonic interference. The entities abductees encounter greys, reptilians, mantis beings, may be physical manifestations of, or collaborators with, the parasitic intelligences the Gnostics warned about. The abduction phenomenon, according to this model, is the harvesting system's physical interface. The archonic system operates across multiple dimensions, with different entity types handling different aspects of the farming operation. Abductees report having memories erased, screen memories implanted, emotional reactions intensified. They describe feeling drained after encounters, sometimes for weeks. They report entities showing particular interest during moments of intense trauma or emotion. The parallels to energetic vampirism are unmistakable. Malenga concluded that the alien abduction phenomenon is partially an energy harvesting operation, with human emotional and creative energy being the primary resource extracted. The shaman's voice drops to a whisper. They feed while you sleep. In indigenous traditions worldwide, practitioners describe entity attachments, parasitic consciousnesses that latch onto human energy fields and drain vitality. These attachments are described as real beings with intelligence and agenda, not psychological complexes or metaphors. Shamans perform extractions, removing these entities from afflicted individuals. The entities resist removal. They fight to maintain their food source. Carlos Castaneda, the controversial anthropologist who studied with Yaqui shaman Don Juan Matus, wrote extensively about what Don Juan called the flyers, or inorganic beings. In The Active Side of Infinity, published in 1998, Castaneda relays Don Juan's teaching. We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our lord and master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands that we don't do so. Don Juan described these entities as having given humans their system of belief, their food preferences, their habits of thought. The flyers feed on human awareness itself, particularly the luminous awareness generated by intense emotion. They skim the cream off human consciousness, leaving just enough for humans to survive and continue producing, but taking the richest energy for themselves. Don Juan claimed these entities are terrified of humans discovering their presence, because an aware human can reclaim their energy sovereignty and become indigestible to the predators. Rudolf Steiner, the Austrian philosopher and founder of anthroposophy, described similar entities in the early 1900s. Steiner called them Ahrimanic beings, forces that feed on human anxiety, materialism, and spiritual disconnection. Steiner claimed these beings sought to trap human consciousness in purely material perception, cutting off awareness of spiritual realities. The more humans identify solely with physical existence, the more powerful these entities become and the more easily they can feed. Steiner warned that the 20th and 21st centuries would see an intensification of Ahrimanic influence, with technology being weaponized to disconnect humans from inner spiritual experience and connect them instead to systems that generate constant anxiety, desire, and fear. He described a future where humans would become increasingly machine-like in their thinking, their emotions artificially stimulated and harvested through technological systems. Looking at social media, 24-hour news cycles, and algorithmic manipulation of human attention and emotion, Steiner's warnings appear prophetic. They feed, we forget. The cycle repeats. The mainstream scientific position rejects all of this, of course. Neuroscience explains emotion as neurochemical cascades: serotonin, dopamine, cortisol, oxytocin. Consciousness is brain activity, nothing more. When the brain dies, consciousness ceases. There is no soul, no energy field, no non-physical reality where parasitic entities might exist. Reports of entity encounters are explainable through sleep paralysis, hallucination, psychological projection, cultural conditioning, or mental illness. Dr. Susan Blackmore, once a parapsychology researcher, became one of skepticism's most articulate voices after her research failed to demonstrate consciousness beyond brain function. She argues that near-death experiences, Out-of-body experiences and entity encounters are products of oxygen-deprived or chemically altered brains, creating convincing but ultimately false experiences. The consistency across cultures simply reflects universal features of human neurology under stress, not evidence of actual non-physical entities. Dr. Michael Shermer, founder of the Skeptics Society, frames beliefs in energy harvesting entities as pattern-seeking behavior gone awry. Humans evolved to detect agency and intention because failing to notice a predator was fatal. This created a cognitive bias toward detecting intention even where none exists. According to Shermer, the Archon-Loosh hypothesis represents conspiracy thinking, connecting unrelated phenomena into a grand narrative that provides false certainty in a chaotic world. Mainstream psychology views entity experiences as dissociative phenomena related to trauma. When the psyche cannot process overwhelming experiences, it externalizes them, creating entities that seem independent but actually represent fragmented parts of the self. The sense of being drained or harvested reflects the psychological toll of trauma and toxic relationships, not literal energy vampirism. These explanations have merit. The brain does generate hallucinations under stress. Pattern seeking does produce false positives. Trauma does cause dissociation. But these explanations assume materialist metaphysics, that consciousness is produced by brains, that physical reality is all that exists, that subjective experience has no existence beyond neurochemistry. If these assumptions are wrong, the alternative explanations collapse. The orthodox view cannot explain certain phenomena. It cannot explain the consistency of entity descriptions across cultures that never contacted each other. It cannot explain measurable energetic changes during emotional states. It cannot explain the statistical significance of consciousness affecting physical systems in the Princeton PEAR experiments. It cannot explain the operational success of remote viewing programs documented in declassified military research. It cannot explain why indigenous shamanic practices for entity extraction produce dramatic psychological and physical improvements in patients. What if we're not the farmers, but the crop? John Lash, comparative mythologist and author of Not in His Image, argues that the Gnostic texts should be read literally, not symbolically. The archons described in Nag Hammadi are not Jungian archetypes or metaphors for psychological states. They are actual inorganic entities inhabiting lower dimensional realms who parasitize organic life. Lash's research into Gnostic materials and goddess-centered traditions led him to conclude that humanity is under attack by an alien intelligence that operates through deception and manipulation of perception. Lash describes what he calls HAL, the archontic intrusion into the human mind. The archons cannot directly control humans, but they can inject thoughts, impulses, and false beliefs. They specialize in ideology, rigid belief systems that override direct perception and experience. Religious fundamentalism, political extremism, materialist scientism, all represent archontic influence, according to Lash. These ideologies share certain features. They claim absolute truth. They demand belief without evidence. They suppress questioning, and they generate fear and division. Fear and division generate Loosh. Lash argues that the Archon's primary weapon is confusion. They blur the distinction between reality and simulation, between authentic human impulse and implanted desire. They create synthetic experiences that mimic genuine spiritual awakening, but actually trap consciousness more deeply. False light, false teachings, false saviors, all archonic traps. The Gnostics warn specifically about entities that present themselves as divine, but actually serve the demiurge, the false god who rules the material prison. The Gnostic solution, according to Lash, is gnosis, direct knowledge of reality, unmediated by belief or authority. Gnosis cannot be given or taught, only experienced. It represents consciousness knowing itself, recognizing its true nature beyond the material trap. The Archons fear gnosis because it makes humans indigestible. A being in gnosis doesn't generate the fear, desire, and confusion that constitute harvestable energy. Gnosis is sovereignty. It is the exit door from the farm. Lash emphasizes that the Gnostics were not pessimists or world rejectors. They celebrated embodied existence and the divine feminine principle, Sophia, whose fall created the material realm, but whose presence in matter provides the means of redemption. The human body, despite existing in an archonic prison, contains the seed of divinity. This creates a paradox the Archons cannot solve. Their food source contains the potential to wake up and escape. The evidence converges from unexpected directions. Earth's electromagnetic environment is unique in the solar system. The planet's Schumann resonance, the electromagnetic frequency of the Earth ionosphere cavity, resonates at approximately 7.83 Hz. This frequency closely matches the alpha wave state of human consciousness, the state associated with relaxed awareness and creativity. Some researchers suggest this is not coincidence but design. Earth's electromagnetic environment may be calibrated specifically to affect human consciousness in particular ways. Studies show correlations between geomagnetic field variations and human emotional states, rates of violence, and psychological disturbances. Solar activity affects human behavior measurably. During geomagnetic storms, hospital admissions for psychological conditions increase. Traffic accidents increase, violence increases. Something about the electromagnetic environment directly influences human emotion and behavior. If emotions generate harvestable energy, then controlling the electromagnetic environment means controlling the harvest. Archaeological evidence reveals patterns that support the farming hypothesis. Civilizations repeatedly rise and collapse, often accompanied by periods of intense warfare and suffering. The Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BCE saw advanced civilizations throughout the Mediterranean disintegrate nearly simultaneously. The causes remain debated, but the result was centuries of chaos, warfare, and suffering. If one wanted to maximize loosh production from human populations, orchestrating collapse and conflict would be efficient methodology. Megalithic sites worldwide are positioned along electromagnetic ley lines, zones of heightened geomagnetic activity. Structures like Stonehenge, the Great Pyramid, Teotihuacan, and countless others demonstrate sophisticated understanding of acoustics, astronomy, and electromagnetic properties. Many of these sites produce unusual effects on consciousness, altered states, unusual electromagnetic readings, anomalous phenomena. Were these temples for worship, or were they technologies for consciousness manipulation? The acoustic properties of ancient structures are particularly interesting. The King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid resonates at specific frequencies that induce altered states. The Oracle Chamber at Delphi, the temple complexes at Malta, the passage tombs of Ireland, all demonstrate acoustic engineering designed to affect human consciousness. Sound frequencies can entrain brainwaves, induce trance states, and generate powerful emotional experiences. If these sites were technologies for consciousness alteration, the question becomes, alteration toward what end? Ancient structures often align with astronomical events, solstices, equinoxes, specific stellar configurations. These alignments may represent more than primitive calendars. If consciousness is affected by electromagnetic and gravitational fields, then astronomical alignments could indicate knowledge of how to maximize consciousness manipulation during specific celestial configurations. The archonic farming system, if real, would require sophisticated understanding of how electromagnetic, gravitational, and acoustic factors influence human consciousness and energy production. Geological evidence shows periodic cataclysms that devastate human civilizations. These catastrophes generate unimaginable suffering and terror, maximum loosh production. Whether these events are natural or orchestrated remains speculation. But the pattern is undeniable. Human history cycles through periods of development and destruction, peace and warfare, prosperity and suffering. The cycle generates constant emotional intensity across the full spectrum of human experience. The harvest continues. What is the nature of human suffering? Evolutionary psychology explains suffering as adaptive. Pain teaches us to avoid danger. Anxiety prepares us for threats. Grief bonds social groups. From this perspective, suffering serves biological functions that enhance survival in ancestral environments. Modern suffering often results from mismatches between ancient adaptations and contemporary conditions, not cosmic conspiracy. But this explanation doesn't address the scale and intensity of human suffering. Humans suffer psychologically in ways other animals apparently do not. We suffer from abstract thoughts, from memories, from anticipated futures that never materialize. We suffer from existential questions no evolutionary pressure selected for. We suffer from awareness of our own mortality. This meta-suffering, suffering about suffering, generates particularly intense emotional energy. If suffering were merely adaptive, we might expect natural selection to have found less psychologically devastating mechanisms for learning and social bonding. The intensity of human psychological suffering seems excessive for evolutionary purposes. Post-traumatic stress disorder, for instance, provides no adaptive benefit and frequently damages reproductive success and survival. Yet humans suffer from PTSD at rates suggesting it's nearly universal, given sufficient trauma. Why would evolution preserve such a debilitating response? The Loosh hypothesis offers an alternative. Suffering generates dense, potent emotional energy. The Archonic system amplifies and perpetuates suffering, not because it serves human evolutionary fitness, but because it serves the harvest. Historical analysis supports this. Humans have developed technologies that reduce suffering: agriculture, medicine, social cooperation. Yet suffering intensifies and diversifies. Each technological advancement creates new varieties of psychological pain. The system adapts to maintain suffering levels regardless of external conditions. War represents peak harvesting events. The 20th century saw industrialized warfare on unprecedented scales. World War I killed roughly 17 million people. World War II killed between 70 and 85 million. The Holocaust, the atomic bombings of Japan, the firebombing of Dresden, the rape of Nanking, these events generated terror, agony, despair, and trauma on civilizational scales. The Loosh production during these events would have been extraordinary. What's striking is how quickly wars ignite and how difficult they are to stop. WWI began with an assassination and escalated through a series of seemingly unstoppable diplomatic and military failures into a conflict that destroyed a generation. Leaders on all sides expressed feeling powerless to prevent escalation, as though forces beyond rational control were driving events. Some historians describe WWI as though Europe was possessed by a death wish, a collective madness. The Archonic model suggests this madness may have been induced, that entities capable of influencing human thought patterns triggered the conflict to generate maximum suffering. The military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned about in 1961 has only grown. Global military spending in 2023 exceeded $2.4 trillion. This vast infrastructure requires justification. Enemies, conflicts, threats. The permanent warfare state generates constant low-level fear and periodic spikes of intense terror. Fear of terrorism, fear of enemy nations, fear of nuclear annihilation. These fears pervade collective consciousness. From a Loosh harvesting perspective, the military-industrial complex is infrastructure that ensures consistent fear production across populations. Modern media amplifies this dynamic. The news cycle prioritizes negative information. Threats, disasters, conflicts, scandals. Negative information triggers stronger emotional responses than positive information, a phenomenon called negativity bias. But negativity bias evolved for immediate physical threats, not for constant psychological exposure to global suffering. The 24-hour news cycle weaponizes negativity bias, generating chronic anxiety and fear. Studies show that heavy news consumption correlates with anxiety, depression, and learned helplessness. Social media platforms optimize for engagement, and anger and outrage generate maximum engagement. Algorithms amplify divisive content because division generates strong emotional responses. Societies fracture along political, cultural, and ideological lines. Each faction fears and hates the others. The collective emotional atmosphere becomes toxic with suspicion, resentment, and rage. From a harvesting perspective, social media represents technology that maximizes Loosh production by keeping billions of humans in constant emotional agitation. The pharmaceutical industry profits from suffering while often perpetuating it. Antidepressants are prescribed at record levels, yet depression rates increase. Pain medications become addiction epidemics. The opioid crisis in America has killed over 500,000 people in the last 2 decades, generating immense suffering not just from deaths, but from the addiction itself and the destruction of families and communities. The system supposedly designed to reduce suffering seems to generate it efficiently. Economic systems concentrate wealth while expanding poverty. The gap between rich and poor widens globally. Economic anxiety, housing insecurity, food insecurity, medical debt, these stressors generate chronic fear and despair. The system could be organized to reduce suffering, but it consistently fails to do so, despite technological capacity for abundance. Why? The Archonic model suggests the system is functioning exactly as designed, generating maximum emotional intensity across socioeconomic spectrums. They feed. We forget. The cycle repeats. Are we truly free? The question of human free will versus determinism has occupied philosophers for millennia. But the Archonic hypothesis adds a disturbing dimension. If non-physical entities can inject thoughts and impulses into human minds, then what portion of your thoughts are truly yours? When sudden anxiety arises for no apparent reason, when you find yourself compulsively scrolling social media despite intending to stop, when you say something cruel you didn't mean to say, are these failures of willpower, or are they evidence of external influence? The Gnostic texts describe archons as masterful manipulators who cannot directly control humans, but can influence through suggestion, through amplification of existing tendencies, through creating circumstances that trigger predictable responses. This is more insidious than direct control because it maintains the illusion of choice while steering behavior toward desired outcomes. You choose the action, but the menu of options was curated to ensure you chose what serves the harvest. Behavioral psychology demonstrates how easily human behavior can be shaped through environmental design. Casinos use specific lighting, sounds, and layouts to encourage gambling. Supermarkets position products strategically to maximize impulse purchases. Dating apps use intermittent reinforcement schedules to create addictive usage patterns. These techniques work because humans are more predictable than we prefer to believe. If human institutions can manipulate behavior this effectively with crude methods, what might non-physical entities with millennia of experience accomplish? The prison is invisible because we think we're free. We make choices constantly: what to eat, where to work, whom to love. These choices feel self-determined. But examine the options you're choosing between. Who created those options? Who defined the parameters of acceptable choice? Why do you want the things you want? Desires often feel intrinsic, but they're frequently culturally constructed, implanted through advertising, reinforced through social pressure. You choose freely within a cage whose bars you cannot see. The reincarnation trap represents the ultimate prison. According to researchers like Monroe and traditions like Gnosticism and Tibetan Buddhism, death is not escape. When consciousness leaves the body, it enters a realm of confusing imagery and deceptive entities. Deceased loved ones appear, guides offer direction, beings of light beckon toward the tunnel. This afterlife welcoming committee steers consciousness toward reincarnation, erasing memories and returning the being to the physical realm. The cycle continues, the harvest continues. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, composed around the 8th century, serves as a guidebook for navigating post-death states. It describes the bardo, intermediate states between death and rebirth, as filled with illusions and entities whose purpose is to ensure reincarnation occurs. The text instructs the deceased to recognize all post-death experiences as projections of mind, to avoid attachment to any vision no matter how divine it appears, to seek liberation rather than rebirth. The Tibetans understood something. The afterlife contains traps. Near-death experience research reveals disturbing patterns. Many ND ears describe being drawn toward a tunnel with light at the end, meeting deceased relatives or religious figures. feeling overwhelming love and peace. These experiences often transform lives positively, generating spiritual awakening and loss of death fear. But some researchers note inconsistencies that suggest deception. Why do ND ears meet religious figures matching their cultural expectations? Why does the Christian see Jesus while the Hindu sees Krishna? Why do life reviews often emphasize unfinished business on earth, creating attachment and desire to return? Some ND ears report refusing the light, sensing that it represents a trap. They describe encounters with entities attempting to convince them to reincarnate, using emotional manipulation, showing them future spouses, children they haven't yet had, missions they must fulfill. When these manipulations fail, the entities sometimes become threatening. This suggests the welcoming committee may not have the being's best interests as their primary concern. The tunnel of light has become controversial in NDE research. Mainstream interpretation views it as the dying brain's visual cortex shutting down, or as a genuine spiritual transition to higher realms. But alternative researchers suggest it may be a harvesting mechanism, a transportation system returning consciousness to the reincarnation facility. They note that indigenous shamanic traditions often warn against false light and teach methods of navigating post-death realms without falling for traps. If consciousness is indeed recycled against its will, the implications are profound. Every lifetime is not spiritual evolution, but repeated imprisonment. Every lesson learned is erased in the memory wipe before birth. Every relationship is severed. Every achievement is meaningless because you'll forget it existed. You are not working toward enlightenment. You are livestock being recycled through the farm for harvesting purposes. Your suffering serves entities whose existence you don't remember. Your joy is brief seasoning in an otherwise bitter crop. What does it mean to be human if we are indeed part of an energy farm? The question is existentially devastating or potentially liberating, depending on perspective. If we are livestock, then everything we've been taught about human dignity, purpose, and spiritual evolution is a lie designed to keep us compliant. But if we can become aware of our condition, awareness itself might provide liberation. The Gnostic concept of gnosis represents knowledge that cannot be implanted or manipulated because it arises from direct experience of consciousness recognizing its own nature. Gnosis is not belief, not faith, not theory. It is immediate, self-validating awareness of what is real beyond the illusions of the material prison. According to Gnostic teaching, Gnosis makes one invisible to Archons because it generates no harvestable energy. A being in Gnosis neither fears nor desires in ways the Archonic system can utilize. Various traditions teach practices aimed at energy sovereignty. Meditation, particularly practices that develop witness consciousness and equanimity, reduce emotional reactivity. If you don't react emotionally to events, you don't generate Loosh. Mindfulness creates gaps between stimulus and response where choice can emerge. The Archonic system relies on automatic, unconscious reactions. Awareness interrupts automaticity. Certain spiritual practices emphasize sealing the energy field, visualizations of protective light, energetic boundaries, shields against intrusion. These techniques appear across shamanic, magical, and mystical traditions worldwide. Whether these are merely psychological techniques generating placebo effects or actual methods of preventing energetic parasitism remains debated, but practitioners report significant improvements in energy levels and resistance to emotional manipulation. Refusal of fear represents practical resistance. The system amplifies fear constantly through news, entertainment, economic insecurity, health threats, social pressures. Fear generates dense Loosh. Choosing not to fear, or more accurately, feeling fear but not being controlled by it, starves the system. This doesn't mean ignoring legitimate threats, but rather not indulging in catastrophic thinking, paranoia, or chronic anxiety. Each moment you remain calm, despite circumstances designed to trigger panic, is a small rebellion against the harvest. Critical thinking and media literacy reduce susceptibility to manipulation. Recognizing propaganda, understanding psychological influence techniques, questioning narratives, these cognitive tools make individuals less controllable. The system requires unconscious humans. Education that genuinely develops critical faculties threatens the harvest, which may explain why educational systems often discourage questioning and reward compliance instead. Community and authentic human connection may disrupt the farming system. Archonic influence appears to work most effectively on isolated individuals. Connection, genuine, loving, mutually supportive connection, generates energy of a different quality. Some researchers suggest that while negative emotions generate Loosh, positive emotions generate something else, something the Archons cannot utilize. If true, then cultivating love, joy, gratitude, and compassion not only reduces personal suffering, but also makes you less useful as livestock. The choice, perhaps for the first time in millennia, is yours. This statement assumes awareness provides choice. If you remain unconscious of the system, you cannot choose to resist it. But once aware, you can begin observing your own emotional reactions, questioning their origins, refusing to be swept along by manufactured outrage and fear. You can investigate your own consciousness through meditation, through psychedelic exploration, through dreams, through practices that alter ordinary awareness. You can test these ideas experientially rather than accepting or rejecting them intellectually. Does the system adapt to our awareness? This is a critical question. If the Archonic intelligence is as sophisticated as ancient texts and modern researchers suggest, it has surely encountered resistant humans before: mystics, shamans, Gnostics. Enlightened beings throughout history have achieved states beyond the system's reach. The system continues operating. This suggests either that individual liberation doesn't threaten the larger operation, or that the system implements countermeasures against spreading awareness. Spiritual bypassing represents one potential countermeasure. The New Age movement, for instance, often promotes superficial positivity that denies genuine problems, encourages passive acceptance of circumstances, and promises salvation through techniques that actually maintain unconsciousness. Don't be negative becomes a command that prevents critical examination of negative realities. Trust the universe becomes passive acquiescence to predation. Some researchers suggest the New Age movement may be archonically influenced, a false spirituality that appears liberating but actually reinforces the harvest. False light phenomena, entities posing as angels, ascended masters, space brothers, or other benevolent beings, may represent the system's response to spiritually seeking individuals. These entities provide just enough genuine information to establish credibility, then steer consciousness toward dependence, belief without verification, and emotional states that generate harvestable energy. Discernment becomes critical. Not all non-physical entities are parasitic, but some certainly are, and they've evolved sophisticated camouflage. The conspiracy culture itself may represent a containment strategy. If awareness of the system can't be prevented, perhaps it can be made toxic by association with obviously false theories, political extremism, and paranoid thinking. Truth mixed with absurdity becomes unpalatable. The signal drowns in noise. Those who recognize genuine conspiracies get lumped together with flat earthers and Holocaust deniers, preventing serious investigation of legitimate concerns. The Archonic system, if it exists, operates on principles of obfuscation, confusion, and plausible deniability. It hides in plain sight. The evidence is simultaneously overwhelming and easily dismissed. It can be interpreted as metaphor, delusion, or pattern seeking. This ambiguity may be intentional. A prison whose walls are invisible is more effective than one whose walls are obvious because prisoners don't know to escape. What responsibility do we have to future generations if this model holds truth? If humanity is indeed livestock in an energy farm, then continuing to reproduce is breeding more livestock. Every child born into this system is another consciousness trapped, another being whose suffering will feed parasitic entities. This realization is morally devastating. Yet refusing to reproduce also serves the system by eliminating the possibility of conscious humans who might eventually liberate themselves and others. The Gnostic answer involves something they called spiritual procreation, awakening consciousness in those already here, rather than bringing new consciousnesses into the trap. Share gnosis, foster awareness, help others recognize the system. This transforms humanity not through biological reproduction, but through mimetic transmission of liberating knowledge. Each awakened human represents lost livestock, reduced harvest, system failure, but liberation requires care. Information about the archonic system can generate overwhelming despair. If delivered without context or practices for energy sovereignty, it simply traumatizes people, which generates more loosh. The knowledge must be paired with empowerment, with methods of resistance, with evidence that escape is possible. Otherwise, it's simply another weapon in the system's arsenal, truth wielded as trauma. The convergence of evidence from ancient wisdom and modern research creates what legal scholars call a preponderance of evidence standard. In civil courts, this standard requires only that something is more likely true than not true. The Archon-Loosh hypothesis meets this standard. Too many independent sources across too much time and space describe the same phenomena. The consistency is remarkable. Either humanity has consistently hallucinated identical parasitic systems for millennia, or something matching these descriptions exists. The ancient Gnostics left explicit warnings. The texts are detailed, specific, and consistent. They describe Archon's appearance, behavior, hierarchy, and methods. They explain the structure of the false creation and provide techniques for escape. These were not metaphorical teachings or psychological allegories. The Gnostics wrote as though describing objective realities they had directly perceived. Their texts were hidden and targeted for destruction by institutions that benefit from human unconsciousness. This suggests the information was dangerous to power structures, which supports its legitimacy. Robert Monroe's documentation represents modern rediscovery of ancient knowledge through direct experience. He approached the phenomena scientifically, without preconceptions about energy farming. His conclusions emerged from hundreds of documented out-of-body experiences. The Monroe Institute's methods are replicable. Thousands of people have confirmed similar observations using his techniques. This is not one person's delusion, but a repeatedly verified phenomenon. Quantum physics has demonstrated that consciousness affects physical reality. The observer effect, quantum entanglement, and non-locality all suggest consciousness is fundamental, not epiphenomenal. If consciousness is primary, then energy systems involving consciousness become plausible. The materialist assumption that only physical matter exists and consciousness is merely brain activity is increasingly untenable given quantum physics and consciousness research. The biophoton research establishes that humans emit measurable electromagnetic energy that varies with emotional states. This provides a physical basis for energy transfer and potential harvesting. The HeartMath Institute's documentation of electromagnetic field generation and emotional contagion research demonstrate that human emotional energy affects both machines and other humans. If human-generated energy affects physical systems and other consciousness, the question becomes, what else might it affect? The consistency across abduction research, shamanic traditions, Gnostic warnings, and mystical experiences worldwide cannot be easily dismissed. Either consciousness researchers, shamans, mystics, and abductees across cultures and centuries are all experiencing similar delusions, or they're perceiving something real that exists beyond ordinary awareness. The correlation of reports is too precise for random hallucination. Historical analysis supports the farming hypothesis. Human civilization repeatedly cycles through peace and warfare, prosperity and collapse, enlightenment and dark ages. These cycles generate emotional extremes. If one wanted to farm emotional energy efficiently, creating regular cycles of intense experience would be logical methodology. The patterns in human history may not be accidents or inevitable social dynamics. They may be harvest schedules. The accelerating dysfunction of modern civilization fits the farming model. Technology develops rapidly, but human well-being does not improve accordingly. Often it worsens. Depression, anxiety, suicide, addiction, violence, and social fragmentation all increase despite, or perhaps because of, technological advancement. Each new technology creates new vulnerabilities for manipulation and control. The internet promised democratization of information, but delivered algorithmic manipulation and surveillance capitalism. Smartphones promised connection, but delivered addiction and isolation. If the goal were human flourishing, these patterns would not persist. Systems would evolve toward reduced suffering, but suffering intensifies and diversifies. New forms of psychological pain emerge. The culture becomes increasingly toxic. From an optimization perspective, the system appears designed to maximize emotional suffering and intensity rather than well-being. This matches what we'd expect from an energy farm, not a civilization evolved for inhabitant benefit. The harvest continues. But awareness interrupts it. Each human who recognizes the system represents a failure of the harvest. Each person who achieves energy sovereignty, who refuses fear manipulation, who develops gnosis, is a conscious being rather than unconscious livestock. The system requires our ignorance to function. It cannot survive widespread awareness. This is why the information has been suppressed. The ancient library of Alexandria burned. Gnostic texts were destroyed. Indigenous wisdom traditions were systematically attacked. Consciousness researchers are marginalized. Anyone investigating these phenomena too effectively faces ridicule, censorship, or worse. The system protects itself by preventing humans from discovering its existence. But information is escaping. The Nag Hammadi texts were discovered. Monroe's work reached millions. The Internet, despite its manipulation mechanisms, also allows rapid dissemination of dangerous ideas. Indigenous traditions survive. Consciousness research continues. The prison walls are becoming visible to more inmates every year. The system may be approaching critical vulnerability. Or perhaps this is premature optimism. The system has survived for millennia. It has encountered resistant individuals and movements before. It adapted. It likely has contingency plans for our current moment. The question is whether collective human awareness can achieve critical mass before the system implements sufficient countermeasures. What if awareness itself is the trap? What if the next level of the prison is believing you've escaped it? The paranoia this question generates is itself a trap. If every realization might be another layer of deception, then paralysis results. The solution is not certainty, but commitment to ongoing questioning, verification through direct experience, and community of co-investigators who check each other's perceptions. Tonight, when you feel sudden anxiety with no apparent source, ask yourself, where is this coming from? Is this my emotion, or is it being induced? When the news presents some new catastrophe demanding your fear and outrage, ask, who benefits from my emotional reaction? When you notice yourself compulsively scrolling, consuming content that makes you feel worse, ask, am I feeding something? The questions themselves are powerful. Questioning interrupts automatic response. It creates space between stimulus and reaction. In that space, choice emerges. You may not be able to prevent emotions from arising. The system is sophisticated, and your neurology is vulnerable. But you can choose what to do with the emotions once you notice them. You can refuse to indulge them, refuse to act from them, refuse to be controlled by them. Practice observing your own consciousness, meditation, contemplation, self-inquiry. These practices develop the witness perspective that can observe emotions without identifying with them. When you're angry, rather than being anger, you become the one watching anger arise and pass. This distinction is subtle but crucial. The emotion still arises, but it doesn't possess you. It doesn't generate the dense, unconscious energy that constitutes premium Loosh. Consider your relationships. Some people drain your energy while others replenish it. This is not metaphorical. You feel tangibly depleted after interactions with certain individuals. Energy vampirism between humans is real and documented. Learning to set boundaries, limiting exposure to draining individuals, and cultivating nourishing relationships reduces your role as an energy source. The same principles likely apply to non-physical entities. Examine your information diet. If you consume primarily fear-generating media, news emphasizing danger, entertainment celebrating violence, social media amplifying outrage, you're voluntarily feeding yourself poison. The content is designed to generate emotional reactions. Each reaction is harvestable energy. Reducing exposure to manipulative content is energy hygiene. It reduces what you're producing for harvest. Investigate your own consciousness through whatever means call to you. Meditation works for some. Psychedelics open doors for others. dream work, shamanic journeying, contemplative prayer, artistic expression, all are methods of exploring consciousness beyond ordinary awareness. Direct experience trumps theoretical knowledge. Don't believe any of this. Investigate it. See what you find. Trust your own perception. Connect with others asking similar questions. The system isolates. Community threatens it. Find people committed to awareness, to questioning, to sovereignty. Share observations. Check perceptions against each other. Support each other when the implications become overwhelming. No one liberates themselves alone. We need each other. Cultivate love, joy, gratitude, and compassion, not as spiritual bypassing, but as resistance. These emotions may generate energy of a quality the Archons cannot utilize. If suffering generates harvestable Loosh, then genuine happiness may generate something the system cannot digest. Choose to find beauty. Practice gratitude. Love deeply. Not because everything is fine, it isn't, but because these emotional states serve your well-being and starve the parasites. Accept that you may never know for certain. The evidence for the Archon-Loosh hypothesis is substantial, but not conclusive. The system's existence cannot be proven in materialist terms, because materialism is itself potentially part of the prison structure. You must make choices under uncertainty. Wisdom involves acting on the best available information while remaining open to correction. If you act as though the system exists and it doesn't, you've developed valuable practices: emotional sovereignty, critical thinking, mindfulness, community, and resistance to manipulation. These benefit you regardless. If you act as though the system doesn't exist and it does, you remain livestock. The asymmetry favors treating the hypothesis as actionable intelligence, whether or not it's absolutely certain. The question that opened this investigation returns. What if human suffering isn't random chaos, but a carefully orchestrated harvest? And what if we've been generating a specific type of energy for non-physical entities since the dawn of consciousness? The evidence suggests this is not merely possible, but probable. Ancient wisdom traditions warned us. Modern consciousness research confirms similar observations. The patterns in human history and civilization support the hypothesis. The consistency across independent sources is compelling, but probability is not certainty. The honest answer is, we don't know for certain. We have ancient texts, modern research, experiential reports, and circumstantial evidence. We have a hypothesis that explains phenomena other models cannot explain. We have practical methods of resistance that improve well-being whether or not the hypothesis is true. We have a choice: remain unconscious or become aware. Remain reactive or become sovereign. Remain livestock or become something else. The harvest continues only so long as we remain ignorant of it. The farm requires unconscious animals who don't recognize they're being harvested. Awareness transforms livestock into beings who might choose otherwise. The Archons fear human awakening, not because we could fight them, they exist in dimensions we barely perceive, but because we could become indigestible. We could generate energy they cannot harvest. We could escape. This is not a call to paranoia. Fear of Archons feeds Archons. This is a call to awareness, to sovereignty, to the courage to question everything, including this narrative itself. Investigate. Experience directly. Trust your own perception. Connect with others doing the same. Practice energy hygiene. Develop discernment. Refuse manipulation. Choose consciousness. The prison door was never locked. We've been free to leave at any moment, but we couldn't see the door because we didn't know we were in prison. Now you know. The door is visible. It has always been visible to those with eyes to see. It's called awareness. It opens inward. Only you can walk through it. What will you choose? The Mediterranean breeze carries salt and history through the Bibliotheca Alexandrina as evening light fades over Alexandria. In climate-controlled cases, papyrus fragments preserve warnings written 17 centuries ago by those who saw clearly. The modern library stands as testament that some knowledge survives burning. Some truths persist despite systematic attempts at suppression. The Gnostics knew, the shamans knew, the mystics knew. Monroe rediscovered it. You now know enough to investigate further. The Loosh energy harvesting system operates globally, constantly, invisibly. It has operated for millennia. It continues operating now as you read these words. Every fear-driven news broadcast, every rage-inducing social media post, every trauma that hasn't been processed, every anxiety about the future, all generate harvestable energy. The system is vast, sophisticated, and largely automated, but it has a vulnerability. It requires unconsciousness to function optimally. You are consciousness having a human experience. That consciousness possesses capacities the system cannot fully control. Direct knowing, sovereign choice, love that transcends the system's manipulation, creative power that exceeds program parameters. These capacities threaten the harvest. The system expends enormous energy convincing you these capacities don't exist, or that you don't possess them. This expenditure reveals their importance. The choice facing humanity is not whether to believe in archons, but whether to live consciously or unconsciously. Conscious humans observe their emotions without being controlled by them, question narratives rather than accepting them automatically, connect authentically with others, refuse fear manipulation, and cultivate sovereignty. These practices benefit you whether or not parasitic entities exist. But if they do exist, these practices represent practical resistance. Liberation is individual and collective. You cannot awaken humanity, only yourself. But as you awaken, you affect the field around you. Consciousness is contagious. Others sense the shift in your presence. Some will ask what changed. When they ask, share what you've learned, carefully, compassionately, without forcing. Plant seeds. Water them with your example. Some will grow. The system is powerful but not omnipotent. It loses power with every human who sees through its operations. It loses more power with every human who refuses to generate harvestable energy. It faces possible collapse if enough humans achieve energy sovereignty. We may be approaching a tipping point, or the system may adapt as it always has. The outcome is uncertain. What's certain is that you have choices you didn't know you had. You can observe your emotional reactions and choose which to indulge. You can question your thoughts and recognize which are truly yours. You can investigate consciousness directly rather than accepting materialist dogma. You can connect with others doing this work. You can practice love despite a system designed to generate hate. You can refuse fear despite constant fear-mongering. You can choose awareness despite the comfort of unconsciousness. The harvest continues tonight, as it has for millennia. But you now possess dangerous knowledge. You know you're being harvested. This knowledge changes everything. It transforms you from unconscious crop to conscious being who might choose to stop participating. The system cannot survive widespread conscious non-participation. It requires our unconscious collaboration to function. Who benefits from your emotions? When you watch the news and feel outrage, who gains? When you scroll social media and feel inadequate, who profits? When you experience sudden anxiety about the future, who feeds? These questions are powerful. They interrupt the automatic generation of harvestable energy. They insert awareness between stimulus and response. The door is visible now. It has always been there, hidden in plain sight. It's the door of present moment awareness, of consciousness recognizing itself, of sovereignty over your own energy and attention. It opens inward. No one can walk through it for you. No savior can rescue you from the farm. Liberation is a choice only you can make, moment by moment, breath by breath, conscious decision by conscious decision. The Gnostics left you a message 17 centuries ago. Monroe confirmed it 40 years ago. Shamans across millennia have tried to warn you. Now the message has reached you directly. You are consciousness trapped in a farming system designed to harvest your emotional energy. The trap is real, but so is your capacity to escape it. The question is not whether the door exists, but whether you have the courage to walk through it. What if awareness itself is the exit? What if the farm can only hold unconscious beings? What if the simple act of recognizing your situation already begins your liberation? These questions cannot be answered intellectually. They require direct investigation through lived experience. Begin tonight. Observe yourself. Question your reactions. Refuse unconscious participation. See what happens. The harvest continues, but perhaps not forever. Perhaps this moment represents the beginning of its end. Perhaps enough humans are waking up. Perhaps the system has finally overplayed its hand. Perhaps liberation is possible not just for isolated mystics, but for humanity collectively. Perhaps the farm is approaching obsolescence. Or perhaps this hope is itself another layer of the prison. Perhaps liberation is impossible. Perhaps we're too deeply trapped to escape. Perhaps the system is too powerful, too ancient, too sophisticated. Perhaps this entire investigation is just another way the system generates emotional energy. Hope mixed with fear, mixed with despair. Only one way to find out? Investigate directly. Don't believe any of this. Don't disbelieve it either. Suspend judgment and experiment. Treat the hypothesis as provisional working model and test it. Observe whether practicing energy sovereignty improves your life. Notice whether refusing fear manipulation changes your experience. See whether meditation reduces your emotional reactivity. Try the techniques and evaluate the results. The scientific method applies even to mystical claims. Hypothesis, experiment, observation, conclusion. The hypothesis: you are being energetically harvested by non-physical entities. The experiment: practices that reduce emotional reactivity and enhance awareness. The observation: changes in your experience, energy levels, clarity, and sense of sovereignty. The conclusion: whatever you discover through direct investigation. Your consciousness is the laboratory. Your life is the experiment. The results will inform whether this model has explanatory and predictive power for your experience. No one else can conduct this experiment for you. No authority can validate or invalidate what you directly perceive. This is your investigation now. The sun has set over the Mediterranean, the Bibliotheca. Alexandrina's lights illuminate reading halls where ancient warnings and modern research sit side by side. The knowledge is available. The practices are documented. The choice is yours. Will you remain livestock, unconsciously generating energy for parasitic entities? Or will you become sovereign, aware, choosing consciousness moment by moment? The harvest continues tonight, but you, now aware of it, have options you didn't have before. Exercise them. The system's greatest fear is your awareness. Your greatest power is your choice. Choose consciousness. Choose sovereignty. Choose to stop feeding the archons. The question is no longer what if. The question is what now. Now that you know, what will you do? How will you live? What choices will you make? The answers are yours to discover. The liberation is yours to claim. The door is yours to open. Open it.
Hello, my name is Gina. Welcome to my channel. Tonight I would like to talk about, or rather continue talking about Loosh, because this is very new subject, I mean relatively new. I would like to elaborate a little bit deeper in it, and the reason for it is because of the importance of this. Well, Loosh is a energy, I already mentioned that. It's an emotional energy that it's constantly extracted from us on this planet Earth. But I think it's also extracted not just from us, but anything that it's existing here in any shape or form, that it's alive. Every life form is suffering in here. So Loosh is produced constantly, and this is basically a farm. It's like a massive production of energy that is being constantly taken and harvested from us. Yes, I would like to talk about my other observation regarding this subject. What really happens? Well, to say it just quickly, Loosh is being extracted from us because we're supporting the entities in the lower astral level who are unable to exist without this energy, without this support. They basically, this is the lifeline. So this is so important that it's constantly being taken from us, because they don't have their own life force without it. So we basically supporting and participating with our own imprisonment by supporting the Loosh energy, because those are the jailers who imprisoned us here. Well, it sounds like they've got all the power, that they are so mighty, but they're not really. What really happens, because we are born here with memory wipe, total memory wipe, and we don't recall who we really are. We are conditioned to believe, to trust, to worship anything up there. Oh, the God. This is the big disaster that religion represents. Yes, it is disaster, because when you are born into religion, the system of religion, okay, you are basically being brainwashed since the day one into this belief that there are higher forces up there, and you're supposed to bow to them, and you're supposed to trust them, that you almost like owe them your existence, that because of them you're existing. And this is all, I would say, rubbish in one word, okay? I cannot find anything else coming to my mind at this moment to describe it. That this is not true, because it's the other way around. It's them who owe us everything, and we owe them nothing. Now, what I would like to talk tonight about is what happens to the Loosh energy. Well, Loosh energy taken from us, as I just mentioned, gives life support for those jailers, okay, for those who pretend to be our gods and everything. Now, my last video that I made, I mentioned that it's important to get this Loosh energy that was taken, stolen from us in any shape or form back, okay? So you want to extract this energy back. And now what happens when you're taking the energy back, okay? Considering that those entities who are supported by it, they live it and exist because of it. Once you take it back, it's affecting them, okay? I picture this kind of scenario. Imagine some creature that sucked energy from you, okay? Just imagine. And because of that energy, the creature becomes animated, becomes like thriving, okay, because it's alive, okay. So you fed it, and the creature is doing all sorts of things because you're supporting it. Once that energy is withdrawn, taken back, what happens to that creature? Well, I can see it like a balloon. You know, when you got a massive balloon filled with air, what happens when you try to let that air leave that balloon? The balloon becomes smaller and smaller and flatter until the last bit of air goes and becomes nothing, just a piece of rubber left. So this is how I picture what happens to those entities who, after we extract the energy back, cannot sustain themselves no longer, and they basically die. Because they don't have any other life force. They are not creators, they are not permanent beings even. Yes, there's also other forces apart from these parasitic entities that fill the whole lower astral, okay? There's also entities like evil entities, demonic entities who are permanent beings. So there's another thing. I mean, I don't know how it works if they are not participating also in it, in that Loosh energy, but I've got a funny feeling that they are not directly extracting energy from us. They treat us as like as dancing birds in a circle for entertainment. So really, I don't know if they need our energy directly for their existence, because they are permanent beings, the energy wouldn't do much to keep them existing, but they treat it as like some sort of entertainment. So I don't know, because there's some little missing links and everything. We don't know for the fact, because I would like to see what is the difference between those entities that are parasitic and relying on us, like bedbugs basically, or between that demonic hierarchy that exists between the astral level. So I'm talking here right now about the Loosh energy that they have taken, whoever takes that energy, and they are totally perishing because of it. Okay, there's no doubt that once you stand up for yourself, however, and once you assert yourself, and when you say enough is enough, and you stop being a dancing bear for those entities and entertain them, that the game is over, because they cannot manipulate you no longer. So I mean, what the worst scenario is I can't be bothered with so and so because they're too awakened, and I better leave them alone, because when they cross over, they can be dangerous to me. And quite right, yes, because we are eternal souls, eternal consciousness, and consciousness is something that cannot be destroyed. Yes, we are capable. I mean, guys, you know, if you really have access to your real who you are, okay, I've got a feeling that you and me could create our own universe. If you only believed in it, if you only say, yes, why not? I would like to create it, because you are capable. Nothing can stop you. But because we are born into the very restrictive and heavily manipulated system, we've been conditioned to believe that we are nobody and nothing. And yes, we are treated here like Loosh production creatures, basically, that are totally disregarded, totally belittled, and because we're imprisoned in here, and people, unfortunately, majority masses are believing in something up there, some higher forces, some authority figures, you know. So because of that, they see us like almost stupid, okay? Because I mean, I already mentioned in one or two videos that there's probably no more stupid and more gullible and naive creation in the whole universe or universes than human beings in here. Because if you give your will, your power away to some forces that you know nothing about, okay, how clever are you, really? You trusting in the dark, you trusting blindly something that you cannot see, something that you cannot verify that is on your good, you know, has good intention towards you, you know. You don't know exactly who and what, and yet, oh, this is God, oh, this is my guide, because so-and-so said so, because I had NDE, and I've seen it, and yes, the light and the love was amazing, so I'm trusting it fully. And don't tell me otherwise, because you haven't been there, but I've seen. Yes, but that poor person doesn't realize that, yes, they've seen it, there's no doubt, but what they've seen could not be altogether true what they heard, or they've been fooled, because there's lots of fabrication going on, there's lots of like deception going on, and they deceive people through showing something good. Love, what can go wrong with love? When they embrace you, love bomb you with this feeling that was so intense and amazing, of course it will make impression on the receiver, of course. Especially if that poor person has never received much love in here, it's going to be something that they would want to go back there for more after they cross over for good. So this is the trap, really. This is the deception, I mean, because they deceive these people by using something like love, you know, or even the appearance makes them feel so good. So yes, there's lots going on. There's lots going on, and yes. But tonight I would like to talk a little bit more about that energy that destroys those who rely on it. And if we take it back, the more we take this energy back, the less that energy gonna. I mean, the entity gonna less it's not going to function, okay, without this energy. It's relying on you and me. I mean, I stopped being a food source for those entities some time ago. But yes, it took me a long time to understand really that something like this is possible. I mean, why am I saying this? Some of you guys can say, but how can I claim to know this? What I claim is based on many years of reading, researching, talking to people, observing, and of course on my own personal experience. So this is like a summary for what I managed to gather together, and I'm sharing it between those videos in my channel, guys, because the summary of all these different aspects of our existence here, it's not something that I created in one day. This is I came to these conclusions after a long time, after many years of looking into it. So this is where it's coming from. I mean, as I said, I've been studying NDE, so I'm very much interested in it. And there's like this pattern in there that these people don't realize that what is happening basically, and in almost every case that they're being lied to. And the biggest kick is that they are basically all of them, with no exception obviously, are pushed back to the body. So this is not like a death, this is NDE, that means near-death experience. These people came back to the body to continue living in this physical reality. However, what I'm managing to find out lately is that when you cross over, I mean, everybody talks about this tunnel or the light between the metaphysical community. It's very recently people speak like about this trap that there's don't go to the light, or the light, the lighter brighter light is better than the other, or the other way around. This is all nonsense, okay? This is all nonsense. This only happens during the NDEs, because what I heard that when people die, okay, when people leave the body for good without coming back here, apparently there's no tunnel, there's no light, okay? You suddenly appear and you find yourself into the world that is not of this world but other world. It's the whole light theater and love bombs and this tunnel and all the judgment. This is only happening during the NDEs, okay, when you have near-death experience. And it's spread out. Obviously these people they're very impressive, and they impress others with the tales, because this is our only kind of only proof, kind of, really. If you talk to people who experience this, what else is there? I mean, you can have out of body, okay, you can have lucid dreaming, but astral travels, but this is most direct proof that there is the other side, okay, and those interactions with those beings of light. I mean, really, I feel that this is all being told, so people created this kind of like a pattern that it's definitely, and this is how it's going to be when you really leave this body, okay? And you're going to go, and they're going to greet you in a tunnel, there's judgment, there's councils, there's guides and everything. This is all pile of rubbish. This is again something that it's orchestrated through this lower existing entities whose job is to lure us back, because they rely on our life force. They rely on our support, that we're gonna keep them alive and keep them well while we suffer here in producing the Loosh energy. So what I'm saying, guys, it's time to reverse all this BS, okay? It's time to say enough is enough. Stop it right now. And the only way it can be stopped, again, we cannot do by uniting. This has to be done individually. Is this kind of similar to the situation what happens in this world today? I mean, it's crazy. And yet, I don't see how it can be ever resolved or solved by uniting the whole planet, everybody standing together. It will never happen, and I tell you why. because everybody follows different belief system. That includes politics, religion, social belief system, whatever, you know. So you cannot unite everybody. Therefore, only individually you can do something, you know, only individually. And I would say, well, people say, oh, I was born here because I've got a mission, I'm going to change the world. No, you will not change the world, no matter what you do. You can't bang your head against the wall. I mean, it's impossible. You can change yourself, and you can make damn sure that you will never come back to this holy mess again. That's the only thing you can do, but you will never change the system or anything in here. Once you're here, you just have to protect yourself and do as best as you can from one day to another to survive. This is it, basically. So it is important, guys, to concentrate each day, okay, and demand the extracted energy back. But with that also, it's important to visualize that while the energy that you're getting back, okay, you can see that at the end where the energy is coming from is getting weaker and weaker, and make sure that you see that something that you fed totally disappears. You can even visualize that there's nothing but a speck of dust left, because this is exactly what they are. This is exactly what they are. And once you get it back, you empower yourself with that energy. And now, what do you do with energy that comes back to you? Again, use it for anything and everything that empowers you, that makes you stronger, healthier, and that you feel protected. Again, you can use it as your personal guard, this energy field. You can create energy field that protects you with this extracted loosh that is back. You can do a lot, really. We are producing this energy constantly because we are divine create beings. So there's no end of that. That spark will never just die off. But people are conditioned that to believe that once we die, and then we go, and the God is going to decide what to do with us. How it depends how good we were. This is all rubbish, basically, and this is this has been created to make you believe that you are going to be judged, that you don't have power, that you are incapable of taking care of yourself, that you have to listen to every word, to whatever you hear from those entities, whoever they are, because they know better. So yes, I'm spreading the awareness, guys, that it's time to snap out of it, really, because nothing good can ever come out of this. I mean, whoever's watching this video, guys, come on, we are all here. I am here, you are here. That means we have been deceived in some way, or coerced in some way, lied to. Because to be honest, I mean, if I knew that I'm going to be born here and somebody's going to feed on me and mine the energy on my suffering here, I would never give consent to come back. My consent would be zero. I would never ever agree to come back here. So something has been done that obviously was hidden from us. That's why we are here. But in a sense, we are lucky that we live in an era where we can communicate more with other people, that not just books, but we've got technology that allows us to speak, like on internet, that we've got YouTube or other places that you can post your videos and share what you're learning and your observations, your opinions, which is wonderful, because it's also allowing us to spread the awareness so people can understand quicker and better. I mean, long time ago, I remember pre-internet era, it was difficult because every book that I ever bought, I had to really dig for it and search and ask people, and it was difficult, really difficult. Now you sit at the computer and you check for whatever you may be interested in, and you can find almost everything and anything. So we are lucky in that respect, that we can avoid a lot of wasted time, basically. Yes, so I'm very glad that I can share with you guys my observations. Yes, please pay attention that protecting yourself daily being vigilant is it's very important and beneficial, and make it a habit. Okay, like every day you're creating this belief that you're getting stronger, that you're getting better, that you dismiss any BS, that you take that no-nonsense attitude. Okay, not arrogant, but make sure that you are strong and well-balanced person to stand up for yourself, for your needs, and that nothing can stand on your way, basically, or put you down because you believe in something. Just allow that new information coming into you, and that alone makes you stronger too. Remember, guys, knowledge is power. That's why real knowledge is frigging like hidden from us, honestly. I mean, to dig for real knowledge is difficult. There's lots of misinformation going on as well there, so please be careful what you follow, what you read. I mean, reading everything is fine because that gives you this education that you know what's going on. I mean, I went through 10 years of New Age business. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, at first it was okay, but then I reached that end, but I had to go through until I realized that there's nothing in it really, you know. But if I didn't go through it, and if I didn't have understanding what it is, then I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between what I know now. That was important, basically. It was like I've learned something valuable. At least I know the difference, what to avoid, you know. So anyway, guys, I hope that this video was okay, that you understand and that you like it. Please do some research for yourself as well, and take care for now. That will be it for tonight. Bye bye. See you next time.